I become the Demon King in Marvel. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 426 Dongfang Bu Bei. Don't fight over it, everyone has a share. The sudden onslaught of the eunuchs left Wanda, still airborne, momentarily stunned. Unable to understand why so many powerful figures had appeared outside the barrier, she was furious and decided to attack them all, more fiercely than the African arms dealer Ultron had encountered. Crimson magic raged, indiscriminately attacking the eunuchs. Chaos magic was powerful, but this crude energy attack was too slow to withstand the nimble eunuchs. Seeing her ultimate attack fail to reach a single soul, Wanda, desperate to vent her anger, merged her consciousness with the magic, once again discovering the true power of chaos magic. It was as if she had stood on the barren land she had purchased with vision only days earlier, her heart agitated, her intense longing for a home with vision sparking chaos magic to create the illusion of Westview. Fire. Furious, Wanda wanted to incinerate all those who had shattered her dreams, restoring everything to its former glory. A blaze engulfed the entire street outside the elementary school, raging with unaided energy and a fierce, raging flame. Damn it! Where did the fire come from? The eunuchs rushed out of the sea of inferno, each employing their own methods to put it out, inevitably leaving some injured. However, the fire was only just beginning. To prevent the town from being destroyed and to preserve her last vestiges of hope, Wanda created a small barrier around the town, trapping most of the eunuchs within. Then, she created lightning, blasting the eunuchs who were darting around within the barrier. No matter how swift the eunuchs were, they were no match for the lightning. Many powerful eunuchs were struck by the lightning, instantly charred. After discovering that she could make magic happen with her words, Wanda became increasingly proficient in the use of chaos magic. Fire and lightning cascaded forth, and the eunuchs trapped within the barrier were unable to wield their magic, let alone reach Wanda in midair, leaving them helpless to be slaughtered. Seeing Wanda's unexpected dark transformation and the massive loss of her tools, Lin Hao, who had remained nearby to provide support, immediately released Zhen, his consciousness taking control of her body, transforming her into Dongfang Bu Bei once again. In the darkness, a flash of swordlight flashed, easily slicing through the barrier outside the elementary school gates. Dongfang Bu Bei, dressed in red, emerged from the darkness and waved his sleeves at the sea of fire. A sudden gust of wind blew away the flames and thunder. Master Dongfang, the rescued eunuchs, covered in burns, converged on Dongfang Bu Bei, casting angry and fearful glances at Wanda in the air as they made ears. Who are you? You're the one who destroyed my barrier. The darkened Wanda attacked Dongfang Bu Bei recklessly. Lin Hao's consciousness controlled Zhen's body, retaliating. The commotion awakened the residents of Westview Town. They had just emerged from the effects of chaos magic, their consciousness still hazy, their memories clashing fiercely with the personas imposed upon them by Wanda. However, the zombies and zombie beasts in the wilderness did not give them much time. The barrier vanished, and with it the eunuchs guarding it. The zombies swarmed in, following the scent of the living. Soon, while the two men were still engaged in a fierce battle outside the elementary school, shrill screams emanated from Westview. Zombies are coming. Steve Rogers' face darkened. The people of Westview are also Americans, and seeing their compatriots in distress naturally pained Captain America. I'll go rescue them. No, Johnny Tyson interrupted him, his tone harsh. You can go, but leave Rama's body with me. Although Eunuch Tyson constantly addressed him as teacher, he didn't really consider him a disciple. His trust in him stemmed solely from his fondness for Captain America. If the two were together, Eunuch Tyson wouldn't worry about Steve taking Rama's body. But now that Steve was going alone to rescue them, what if he ran away? What if something happened? Rama's body was crucial to Eunuch Tyson's ability to become a man again, and to his ability to become strong enough to defeat that damned Adam Smith. With so much at stake, Eunuch Tai was naturally worried. As for joining in the rescue, what a joke. Eunuch Tai, a former underground fighter, wasn't a superhero, so how could he possibly go? He'd rather stay here and help Lord Dongfang than save a stranger. The screams intensified around him. Steve, understanding his intention, no longer hesitated. He magically retrieved the cardboard box containing Rama's remains and tossed it to Eunuch Tai, then dashed off into the darkness without hesitation. He was the true Captain America. Steve's unwavering action touched Eunuch Tai's cold heart, and he whispered, "What a fool." The moment the box appeared, many of the eunuchs who had been secretly watching him rushed over. Seeing this, Eunuch Tai drew his sword and engaged them. Lord Dongfang was still locked in a fierce battle, and Eunuch Tai, convinced that his top henchman must not escape. Seeing the fierce fight between the two, Lin Hao, manipulating Zhen's body, spoke, "Rama's remains can be used multiple times, and only one contact is needed. There's no need to fight for them." "Did you hear that?" Eunuch Tai roared. "Master Dongfang is fighting a powerful enemy for us, yet you're so focused on yourselves. Have you forgotten the kindness Master Dongfang showed you when he passed on his skills?" His scolding caused many eunuchs to stop fighting and withdraw their hands in embarrassment. Among these eunuchs were legitimate eunuchs from the Western factory, who had been personally mutilated by Zhen, as well as those who had inflicted their own mutilations and then acquired internal energy and sword techniques through official or private American channels. Now, hearing Dongfang Bubei's promise, the less legitimate eunuchs were too embarrassed to fight for the remains, but they still surrounded Eunuch Tai, refusing to let him leave. Seeing this, Eunuch Tai had no choice but to put down the box and remove the mummy. "Line up, everyone. Come one by one." With that, Eunuch Tai gently placed the mummy on the ground, pressing it down with his hand. Instantly, a memory flooded his mind. The extreme yin energy that Lord Dongfang had mentioned also entered his body through his arm. To digest the memory and resist the encroaching force of this extreme yin energy, Eunuch Tai quickly jumped aside and sat cross-legged in front of the crowd. The eunuchs nearby, seeing his ferocious expression, felt a flicker of doubt. But the hope of becoming a man again lay before them, along with the opportunity to become even more powerful. After a moment's deliberation, they all stepped forward. At first, there was some chaos. But once the stronger eunuchs in front had touched the mummy, they were too busy to focus on anything else and could only sit cross-legged in meditation. The eunuchs behind, no longer worried about not being able to touch Rama's remains, began to gather their attention in an orderly manner. Soon, the eunuchs formed a circle around the mummy, all meditating with gritted teeth. As the extreme yin energy entered their bodies, a sudden hunger arose, forcing the eunuchs to exert all their might to control it. However, there were always those who were weak-willed. A roar erupted from one of the eunuchs' throats. Chapter 427, Stop Fighting, You Won't Kill Anyone Like This. Unable to withstand the ravages of the zombie virus extract, the eunuch suddenly opened his eyes and lunged at the other eunuch sitting cross-legged in the front row. His slender neck was so alluring that the frantic eunuch in the back row bit him. Perhaps having just meditated and channeled his inner energy, following the magical energy's circulation path, the eunuch didn't tear at flesh like a normal zombie. Instead, he automatically channeled his magical energy and devoured it fiercely. The front row eunuch's flesh withered at a visible rate. His essence and blood were completely drained, leaving him emaciated. After absorbing the blood, the eunuch in the back row's hunger was slightly satisfied, and his mind temporarily regained clarity. A look of surprise and delight appeared on his face. I've gotten stronger. I've gotten stronger. The inner energy in his danshin had doubled in size, surging through his meridians like a tidal wave, reminiscent of the novel experience he had when he first encountered inner energy. The eunuch sitting in the row in front of him was so weak that only flesh and blood remained. However, to Lin Hao's surprise, he was still alive. With difficulty, he turned his head and glared angrily at his attacker. Fuck you, give me back my power. With that, he turned and pounced. Is the zombie virus so strong? He lost all his energy and blood, yet he's still alive. Lin Hao, floating in the sky on auspicious clouds, was quite surprised. After developing the virus extract, Lin Hao had not conducted any experiments. This was his first human experiment. After all, the great demon king wouldn't experiment on his own people. After the surprise faded, he thought it was a good thing. The eunuch, having lost his energy and blood, wouldn't die. He would definitely find a way to regain his strength. A fire would burn on its own without any fuel. With a group of rabid zombie eunuchs like these, America, no matter which universe, would be completely ravaged. On the street outside the school, a strand of Lin Hao's consciousness continued to manipulate Zhen's body, impersonating Dongfang Bubei as he battled against the darkened Wanda, leisurely observing the power of chaos magic. A little further away, on the school playground, the eunuchs, who had been sitting cross-legged in meditation, digesting their magic, were startled. They endured the erosion of the virus extract and watched with disdain as the two eunuchs, one strong and one weak, engaged in a chaotic battle. While it might be called a chaos, it was actually a one-sided crushing defeat. The eunuch who had successfully attacked had doubled his power, and combined with the newly generated internal energy from his magic, he was now arguably stronger than any other eunuch on the playground. He simply hadn't yet accustomed himself to this newfound power, and the excitement of his sudden surge of strength, coupled with the relentless erosion of the virus extract on his sanity, had frantically stared at the emaciated eunuch, neglecting to exploit this window of opportunity to prey on the other eunuchs. However, there were also some clever individuals among the eunuchs who saw a clue in the two eunuchs' behavior. Did that guy just suck all his blood? No, not just blood, but his internal energy as well. That's right, this thinner guy has the speed and strength of an ordinary person. The eunuchs were suddenly startled. Could it be that the skills contained in Rama's remains can absorb the internal energy of others and use it for their own benefit? And for a moment, all the eunuchs distanced themselves from each other. There was wariness, but also desire. These eunuchs were already being corrupted, and now the desire to become stronger was also strong. How could they resist? Immediately, some eunuchs took action, rushing towards those around them. A real melee broke out. Outside the school, Dongfang Bubei seemed to see their reactions inside for the first time. Rama's internal energy is the most challenging test of one's character. If one cannot overcome oneself, one will become a slave to desire and will never achieve the state of transforming yin into yang. His voice was deep and powerful, full of masculine charm, embodying his true manliness, like a benchmark for all eunuchs. The eunuchs in the chaos paused for a moment after hearing these words. Some determined men bravely retreated. These were eunuchs who longed to become men again. They had once cut themselves open to protect their families, and now, to protect them, they desperately wanted to become men again. Even Chinese women find it hard to tolerate incompetent men, let alone American women. How could a man who has always followed his wife unwaveringly not satisfy her? These resolute eunuchs turned and fled. The rest, unable to resist the ravages of the viral extract, continued to engage in the chaotic battle. Alice, you chose your own path. Take care of yourself. With that, Dongfang Bubei launched a powerful slash at Wanda, forcing her back. With ghostly movements, he left in a red shadow, vanishing into the night. His words were like a cry, stop fighting. You won't die. The eunuch's fight intensified. Steve Rogers, who had rushed to rescue the residents, heard the commotion and flew back. Seeing the eunuchs fighting frantically, he didn't intervene. Instead, he approached Johnny Tyson and asked, Master, what's going on here? Don't come over. Suppressing his desire, eunuch Taihide stayed away from the battlefield. Seeing Lord Dongfang leave, he planned to follow the other eunuch's lead. Seeing Steve return, perhaps to repay his earlier integrity, eunuch Tai reminded him, the techniques found on Rama's remains can absorb the inner energy and vitality of others, transforming them for your own benefit and making you stronger. But Lord Dongfang said that if you can't conquer yourself, you'll become a slave to desire, forever unable to take that final step. Think carefully about whether you want to touch Rama's remains. With that, eunuch Tai soared into the darkness. Steve gazed at Rama's remains not far away, deliberating for a moment before stepping forward to scoop them up and striding out of Westview. The moment he touched the corpse, the zombie virus extract penetrated Steven's body through his skin, sending a sharp shock to even his iron will. However, this Steve still possessed the super soldier serum, fortifying his already strong will even further. He was, after all, the very embodiment of the American spirit. Though the zombie virus extract continued to erode him, Steve forcibly restrained himself with willpower. Thus, he journeyed into the wilderness, reunited with a previously dispatched team, quickly returned to the nearby city, and through the portal back to the base universe. Interesting. It seems the one with the greatest hope of defeating the virus and cultivating the human elixir is Captain America. Using the American spirit to cultivate a great elixir that enhances physical cultivation, unlike this fate. As for the Rama's remains being taken away, Lin Hao wasn't concerned. The zombie virus extract, like the zombie virus itself, was contagious, and these eunuchs could spread the virus simply by employing the techniques included in their magic skills. Furthermore, like the exorcist sword technique, the magic skills only required memorizing the key flow paths to practice, and could be passed down orally even without the Rama's remains, Steve brought Rama's body back to the base universe naturally for the fathers-in-law under his command, but if he fails to control it, his America will fall into disaster. Even without his action, the America in the base universe cannot escape the fate of being infected by the zombie virus. Because in these days, in the areas of America that the Lone Star Republic has not yet controlled, many zombies and zombie beasts have already run into the portal and panic. After finishing this matter, Lin Hao waited for the 18-year-old Wanda to return. She is persuading the old Wanda at this moment. Physical persuasion, convincing people with virtue. Alice, there are so many things to do on the first day back to work, and I was forced to stay up late again. Chapter 428 Humph, old women just like to be pretentious. Wanda, bearing Dongfang Bubei's final, brutal blow, was slammed into a deep pit by a soaring slash. Her bones were shattered, and a hideous wound ripped from shoulder to waist, gushing blood. A darkened Wanda, still holding her crown and cape, lay in the pit, staring blankly at the night sky. Her dream had barely begun, but it was interrupted. Vision was gone, her twin sons were gone, and her family was destroyed once again. What was the meaning of life? What hope was there in living? Wanda could find no purpose to continue living. Then a familiar figure appeared in her eyes, her own, younger, like herself 10 years earlier. Hey, if you don't heal your wounds, you'll really die, the young Wanda said lazily, her eyes squinting. Just a friendly reminder, your universe's solar system is eternally sealed. Even if you die, your soul can't ascend to heaven or descend to hell, let alone meet that bitch death. The familiar face and voice awakened Wanda from her drowsiness, and her eyes began to focus on the young woman above the pit. Chaos magic surged, and the wounds on her body healed in the blink of an eye. Wanda floated out, staring at the 18-year-old girl with a wary look, demanding, "Who are you? What's so great about being able to fly?" The young Wanda simply stepped on the auspicious clouds and floated higher. Country bumpkin. See? It's more stylish than yours. Lin Hao was never stingy with his friends, and he would never hide any knowledge he could impart. Besides, the three traffic light sisters were all his close friends. Ignoring the other party's ridicule, Wanda still questioned, "Who are you? Didn't your Avengers companions tell you about the information about the parallel universe?" The young Wanda did not hide her sarcasm. "Then I really have trust in you. As a Sokovian, don't you know who is responsible for the tragic fate of our country? It's America. How many small countries like Sokovia has the United States sacrificed to maintain its hegemony? But you actually recognize the enemy as your father. Are you worthy of your dead parents?" While cursing, the young Wanda suddenly seemed to have just reacted, patted her head, and made an insincere apology. "Oh, sorry. I forgot you haven't been to school for many years, let alone studied politics. Hollywood is deliberately using its movies to brainwash you fools, promoting ideas of apolitical freedom, and you fools actually believe it. Of course the capitalists don't want the common people to learn dragon-slaying skills. They only want them, the elite, to master them, so you can live in a muddle, not even knowing who to hate." Wanda, floating across from her, was ashen-faced. She wanted to ask who the other person was, to find out if it was as she suspected, but was instead berated. "I'm 30 years old. How can I be scolded for being ignorant by a little brat? Have you said enough?" Wanda raised her hands, a crimson halo swirling around her palms. "Since you won't tell me, I'll see for myself. Look at what you can do," the young Wanda scoffed. Before the other person could launch an attack, she suddenly teleported behind her and delivered a powerful kick. Wanda, floating, was struck by this immense force. She opened her arms and flew toward the earth, embracing Mother Earth once again. Bang! The ground cracked, and Wanda created another crater. The good news was that this one was smaller than the previous one. The bad news was that another bone was broken, and this time she landed face first. Tisk, tisk, wasn't that impressive just now? Young Wanda descended on auspicious clouds, crouching and continuing her attack. That's it. Having been brought back to the SHIE Bureau by Lin Hao at the age of 10 and attending the Bureau's in-house school, young Wanda not only acquired a Beijing accent but also mastered the traditional Beijing-style fighting techniques. Prone, Wanda raged, slamming her hands against the ground and launching herself back up. The wounds on her body and face healed in the blink of an eye. "Whoever you are, you die today." She couldn't finish her words as young Wanda lunged forward again, slamming his fist into her abdomen, knocking the rest of her words back and sending her flying. But this was only the beginning. Young Wanda closed in again, swinging her fists, leaving after images and unleashing a flurry of blows. The pain was secondary, the key was the way young Wanda focused on the older Wanda's chest, hammering away with a deliberate intensity. HMPH, old women love to exaggerate. You think you're so great about altering reality, whether it was impressive or not. Old Wanda wasn't sure. After all, Vision used to love facial cleanser and brainwaves. Have you had enough? Old Wanda raged, recovering from the beatings. You want it, but you can't do it yourself. She was completely certain that this younger girl with the same face was herself, her alternate universe self. No proof needed, just a woman's intuition. Shut up. My brother Lin wouldn't be so superficial, young Wanda snapped. She clearly ignored the allure of Tsunade, the yellow light of the green and red light duo. The older Wanda found herself inferior to her younger self in speed and strength. Even her chaos magic couldn't alter the opponent's physical attributes, let alone inflict negative status effects. Being constantly outmatched wasn't a pleasant feeling, and no Wanda was a masochist. The older Wanda shifted dimensions, creating distance by folding space, and then immediately began to speak softly. She didn't beg for mercy outright, but instead redirected the conversation to the other person's interests. Who's your brother Lin? Is he your boyfriend? Only Wanda knew her best. Her alternate universe self clearly had a different fate, so this sudden mention of brother Lin might be the key, much like how Vision meant to her. The older Wanda guessed correctly. Of course, the younger Wanda beamed with pride, selectively ignoring the other two. Seeing the other's happiness, the older Wanda felt a mixture of relief and sadness. That's good. At least you have a purpose to live for. After venting for a moment, the younger Wanda remembered the tragic fate of the Wanda across from her, and her heart softened. Okay, brother Lin wants to tell you. Your robot boyfriend's body was taken by SWORD. They've been trying to restore it for 5 years, and now they're in the final stages. What did you say? The elderly Wanda suddenly looked up, flying over regardless of the danger, demanding, is Vision still alive? How is that possible? The young Wanda rolled her eyes. The core of your robot boyfriend is the Mind Stone. Once the stone is destroyed, his soul is gone. If you think as long as the memories are there, we're the same person, then ignore what I said. Take it back and restore its memories. It'll be useful again. I just don't know if its heating function has been restored. The elderly Wanda ignored the sarcasm, but was deeply concerned about Vision's body. I want it back. Vision is not an object, and his body cannot be desecrated, as you wish. With a zombie outbreak in America right now, your operation should go smoothly. With that, the young Wanda turned and floated away. If you have nowhere to go in the future, you can come to me. Pietro wouldn't mind having another sister. Director Lin always spared no effort to cause trouble for the Americans. Chapter 429 Avengers and the Jedi. While Lin Hao was making his plans in Westview, both Americas in the film's main universe and the base universe underwent irreversible changes. The zombie virus fully unleashed its full force, infecting a growing number of people. The main universe was no longer confined to North America, but had erupted across Europe, Africa, and Asia. Countries were helpless in the face of this devastating and incurable virus, except for a nation in the east, protected by a vast immortal formation. Envious hostile forces deliberately attempted to sneak zombies across the border, but upon approaching the border, they were struck by the light emanating from the formation, turning them to ash. The immortal formation, no longer invisible, now manifested openly across the land, a thin veil of light that gave residents a sense of security. They knew what was truly happening abroad. Watching the television news footage of zombies mauling the living, everyone finally understood the value of this present safety and prayed that the veil of light above them would never dissipate. In contrast, New York, the source of the virus, had become a zombie paradise. Before Washington's top brass could issue the order for another nuclear launch, they were struck. Their bodyguards fended off the zombies and zombie beasts, but they couldn't stop the ubiquitous insects. America's top brass had fallen once again. The few who managed to survive couldn't even form a provisional government, retreating to their own territories to survive. The federal government became a hollow shell, and the states began to govern without a federal government. In this critical moment of survival, the Avengers became the village's hope. The returning black salted egg brought SHIELD's last, decrepit spaceship to serve as the Avengers' new headquarters, floating over America. Captain America, from the film's main universe, had lost his serum and was now reduced to mere skin and bones, but after overcoming his weakness, he emerged from the emergency room and stood up again. How's Bruce doing? Though emaciated and powerless, Steve remained a leader, for he possessed a fortitude of nerve. Any group, in times of crisis, needs a pillar of support, and only Steve could be the Avengers' pillar of support. I can't be trapped any longer. Tony Stark of the main universe, having not rested for days, was experiencing the same misery his other self had endured. Friday pulled up a video feed from a makeshift warehouse on the surface. After the Hulk's rampage aboard the helicarrier 11 years prior, the Avengers dared not keep him aboard again, especially now that the Hulk had been infected by the zombie virus and was ruthless. The zombie Hulk was trapped in a makeshift warehouse on the surface. The Iron Man suit, provided by Tony, was guarding and constantly reinforcing the blockade. Unfortunately, the Hulk's hunger grew, and he became increasingly violent and dangerous. The zombie virus seemed to have awakened the Hulk's anger makes him stronger trait, and the Iron Man suit's speed in constructing the blockade could no longer keep up with the Hulk's speed in destroying it. If this keeps up, the Hulk will be free in 2 hours at most, Tony said dejectedly. Look at him, he'll probably devour an entire city after he gets out. The skinny Steve was silent for a moment, then said with difficulty, we must stop him. Who's going? Tony asked. I'll ask Thor and Carol. Just as the skinny Steve was about to turn around, Friday projected a new image. Shit, Tony cursed. What a bunch of idiots. Steve turned back and saw a new type of zombie appear on the screen. They were often dressed in red and moved incredibly fast. They would pounce on a living person, bite their neck, and then quickly turn them into a mummy. After consuming their fill, the new type of zombie would quickly pounce on the next person, the whole process taking less than 3 seconds. This new type of zombie hunted far faster than ordinary zombies. Upon discovering this new development, the remaining Avengers flocked to the helicarrier's conference room. There was a thinner version of Captain America, Steve, Iron Man, Tony, Thor, Scott, Ant-Man, Hope, the Wasp, the original Ant-Man, Pym, Janet, the original Wasp, Nick Fury from the main universe, and Phil Coulson, another Iron Man, Tony, and Carol, Ms. Marvel, from the base universe. These people, Coulson was most familiar with the father-in-laws. If he hadn't insisted, he would have become one of them. They're all swordsmen from our side. What's going on? Nick Fury, just days after his resurrection, found he had lost even the most basic understanding of this world. With portals across America, sudden zombies, and even American invaders from another universe, the world was changing so rapidly. Boss, I'll report back to you later. Coulson felt a sense of security after seeing the black brine eggs of this universe. He no longer had to shoulder everything himself and could return to the good life of following orders and obeying commands. Although the outside world was far from idyllic. They're eating people so fast. Carol watched for just a moment before rising in anger. I'll take care of them. These fathers-in-law were all from her universe, which made Carol feel as if her own relatives had embarrassed themselves, bringing shame upon the entire family. At that moment, a golden red halo appeared in the conference room. An anxious Stephen Strange quickly stepped over and burst into the bad news. Oh no. Earth's under blockade. Wow. The others looked at each other in bewilderment. Stephen explained that Friday had received the call and, upon identifying Rocket Raccoon, had immediately deployed. Damn it. Who's behind this? The solar system's under a barrier of light. Rocket Raccoon, seen on the video screen, looked incredulous. What did you say? Tony immediately leaned forward and demanded loudly. What do you mean the solar system's under blockade? So the entire solar system is under blockade? Stephen whispered softly. Kamar Taj is responsible for guarding the dimension where Earth resides. Even if Earth were to be attacked by Thanos, the king would return to the temple to protect the magical barrier. After all, Thanos is only an enemy of this universe. Earth is constantly under threat of invasion from demons from other dimensions. With Thanos defeated and the other half of the population returned, Stephen had no choice but to return to Kamar Taj to fulfill his duty as a defender. He had originally intended to investigate Lin Hao and SHIELD, but was met with stern warnings from Tony and Carol. Carol, having witnessed Lin Hao's strength, believed she had a rough idea of his motives. The appearance of a protective formation in the Chinese universe further convinced her that Lin Hao and SHIELD were solely concerned with the survival of the Chinese in all other universes. It was fortunate that such a powerful being cared only about protecting their compatriots in every universe. Rashly provoking them would only bring about a formidable enemy for America, a disastrous outcome. Stephen only half listened, but Nick Fury's thoughts went out the other way. He was deeply curious about SHIELD, a force to be reckoned with. If the sudden outbreak of the zombie virus hadn't consumed his attention, Black Salted Egg would have already begun his own demise. See for yourself. Rocket switched the video feed to a shot of the ship facing outward, then pulled the trigger and fired an energy cannon into the void. The cannon struck the light barrier set up by Eternity, but not even a ripple was created. Clearly, they had already tried every possible means against this barrier. Fuck, which son of a bitch pulled that? Star-Lord cursed. The destroyer immediately chimed in, let me know who did it, and I'll tear him apart. If it's an energy shield covering the entire solar system, I don't think you can handle it, Mantis ruthlessly pointed out. Seeing Thanos dead, Star-Lord and his crew had long lost patience with Earth. If Rocket hadn't developed an inexplicable affection for the Earthlings, spending more time researching the zombie virus, they would have left days ago. Today, Rocket Raccoon finally gave up on Star-Lord and the others nagging and decided to set sail back to space. Just as he was about to leave the solar system, he crashed head-on into a light barrier set up by Eternity. If it weren't for a smooth drift by the experienced Star-Lord, the ship and everyone on board would have been destroyed. At Tony and Steve's suggestion, Rocket piloted the spaceship around the light barrier for a long time, broadcasting the footage live to the Avengers on Earth. The silent Avengers didn't notice that Carol, standing beside them, had vanished into a blaze of colorful light. 10 minutes later, Rocket had captured enough evidence, and Carol, who had been on a field trip, also flew back to Earth. We're blocked. Carol's heart suddenly surged with an incomprehensible fire. She smashed the metal table in the conference room with a fist and roared, why is this happening again? Are you sure you can break it this time? The two Tonys demanded. The light barrier Shenran had used to blockade America's base universe could actually have been shattered by Carol unleashing the power of the binary stars. However, the barrier reached deep into the North American continent's mantle. Repeated bombardment would have transmitted the shockwaves underground, crumbling the entire continent, shattering mountains and rivers, and sending lava cascading back. Currently, this barrier was spread across the void of space, several astronomical units away from Earth, so there was no need to worry about the shockwaves spreading and impacting Earth. No, Carol shook her head dejectedly. I've tried it. I punched with all my might, and the barrier remained motionless. It seems the entity behind this blockade is a powerful cosmic deity or dimensional demon, Steven said, speaking fairly. After all, he didn't understand Lin Hao's methods, so he didn't suspect the Earthlings. Carol's expression darkened. After a moment's silence, she suddenly said, I'm going out. She was going to find Lin Hao and get to the bottom of things, even if it meant risking her life. Just as she flew away in a shimmering aura, the temporary warehouse on the ground was ripped open by an angry green figure. Zombie Hulk is out. Big guy with a big belly and a big appetite. Chapter 1. Chapter 430. Director Lin is heartbreaking. Hulk is a cannibal. A thick layer of white clouds has recently appeared over the Bohai Sea. Wherever this cloud exists, wind and rain will bypass it. Above the white clouds, Lin Hao's subordinates and henchmen are all meditating, practicing the Taoist techniques he has taught them. After witnessing the actions of the Marvel editors and the eternal blockade of the solar system, they have come to understand their fate, realizing that they are merely pawns in the hands of higher dimensional beings. Unwilling to accept their fate, they have requested that Lin Hao grant them a contract to protect their souls and have begun practicing Taoist techniques that do not belong to the Marvel Universe. Director Mie is no exception. The prouder and more powerful, the more unwilling they are to accept a fate controlled by others. A colorful light streaked across the Pacific Ocean, reaching above the clouds. Odin and Thanos opened their eyes, with a former rising to greet them. Ms. Danvers, what can I do for you? The elderly Odin smiled gently, but Carol sensed a strong sense of threat from him. Both hailed from the base universe. Carol, once manipulated by the Supreme Intelligence, had fought for the Kree and clashed with the 9 realms under Asgard. Odin intervened, and the two sides met once more, resulting in a draw. Now, Carol felt that even unleashing the power of the twin stars would quickly lead to defeat. Where's Mr. Lin Hao? Carol glanced around. Neither Lin Hao nor the other two terrifying figures were visible above the clouds. The boss told you to tell me if you come here that the barrier sealing off the solar system wasn't our doing. It was the work of the Creator God Eternal. He sealed the solar system to prevent the zombie virus from spreading throughout the universe, Odin replied calmly. He spoke so freely because the truth hurt more than a lie. Carol's expression was stunned, as if she'd been abandoned by her parents. You said it, Carol wanted to question, but found she couldn't. Indeed, if it weren't a being of Eternal's caliber, how many others in the universe could have erected a barrier so invulnerable to even her full-strength blast? But why Eternal? Isn't he the great creator god? Isn't he a kind mother? Why seal off the solar system? Have the people of Earth been abandoned by the creator god? This is even more devastating than a Christian discovering they've been abandoned by God. While God doesn't exist in reality, Eternal does exist in the Marvel Universe. Carol is precisely one of those who know of Eternal's existence. No, Carol's heart shattered, the light around her dimmed, flickering as if it would suddenly go out. She could only mutter in a daze, why, you want to know why? Odin faithfully carried out his boss's plan to kill and destroy the heart, waving his hand and projecting a scene. This woman's name is Linxin. She's nominally Eternal's daughter, but in reality, she's his clone. This was the scene Lin Hao projected from the memories transmitted back by Arnim Zola, taking place in the real world of Marvel Studios. This company is called Marvel. Their world is the real world. Our multiverse is just a creation of comics and movies. Impossible, Carol screamed. If she possessed Black Bolt's powers, that scream would have been enough to take down at least one Sorcerer Supreme. Odin tilted his head, frowning slightly. Believe it or not, I'm only responsible for delivering the truth. With that, the old man delivered a fatal blow. The zombie virus was deliberately created by Marvel's top brass to make a deal with Eternity. Don't waste your time trying to detoxify it. Not even the omnipotent Eternity can do it. These words silenced not only Carol but also Eternity beyond the multiverse. He finally understood why the zombie virus had appeared so early. It was a deliberate contrivance by Marvel's top brass. You're lying to me. Carol's heart was in turmoil, unwilling to accept such a harsh reality. Like Zhang Lin Hao, she kept repeating, you're lying to me. Odin simply shook his head, deliberately glancing at the empty sky, then turned back to his meditation. He wouldn't have said so much if he hadn't noticed someone peeping. On the Avengers helicarrier, Stephen Strange, operating the magic mirror, gaped in confusion. He had also heard what Odin had just said. No, this isn't true. At that moment, he regretted it. Why had he done it? Why was he so curious about Carol's movements? Why had he even broadcast the footage live to everyone else? However, he was clearly overthinking it. The other Avengers didn't quite understand. Who is Eternal? What Marvel company? Has this Asgardian God King lost his mind? He actually said our universe was created by a company for comics and movies? Haha, are we all just people in books and movies? Thor, you have to take care of your father. Is he getting Alzheimer's? Thor glared at Ant-Man Scott Lang. Although this Odin wasn't his father, he was another Asgardian God King. Idiot, don't talk nonsense if you don't know. The Eternal God is real. He is the creator god of the universe and is omnipotent. Really? Then why doesn't he just wipe out the virus and block the solar system? Scott retorted, he who is omnipotent can't even solve a little virus. The Eternal God is real, Stephen Strange testified. There are many books in Kamartaj that record his name. He is a god countless times more powerful than Vishanti. The books left by the Ancient One said that she had the honor of communicating with the Eternal God once, but was not qualified to borrow his power. The bald female nun could only communicate with a single Eternal at most, but she could be said to have personally come into contact with Eternal. Okay, then why is he blocking the solar system? Scott continued indignantly. Is he afraid we'll cause trouble for the aliens? That should be it. Stephen nodded helplessly. After all, Earth is just a tiny, insignificant planet in the universe. There are so many other planets with life. Fuck, Scott cursed. So Earthlings are being sacrificed. They all chose to ignore Odin's information about Marvel, finding it absurd, and even more so, fear, which subconsciously made them unwilling to touch upon it. However, Tony Stark from the base universe became the little boy who pointed out that the Emperor had no clothes, muttering to himself, I finally know what he's going to do. As someone known as cursed by knowledge, Tony, regardless of which universe he lived in, was intelligent. Reflecting on the events since his encounter with Lin Hao, this tormented Tony believed he had guessed his intentions. He's fighting his own fate. That's why in my universe, Thanos didn't wipe out half of all life, and the macro people who descended on Earth were easily wiped out by the SHIER. But why sacrifice America? Tony from the base universe also became like Zhang Lin Hao, his eyes dull and he kept mumbling. Hey, Tony from the main movie universe slapped him on the neck, knocking him unconscious. An unmanned Iron Man suit, controlled by Friday, entered the conference room and took the unconscious Tony to the break room. After the zombie virus outbreak, Tony from the main movie universe increased the Iron Man suit production line, producing a large number of older models as tools to eliminate the zombies. This time, Steve Rogers didn't use freedom as an excuse to criticize Tony's Iron Legion plan. Captain America had lost his power and was unable to protect his beloved America. Besides, Iron Man suits were more advantageous than living people against contagious zombies. Tony from the base universe used these words to force the Avengers in the conference room to confront the topic they had deliberately avoided. Are we really? Don't be ridiculous, Tony, from the main movie universe, forced composure and a bitter smile. We still have a lot to deal with. The Avengers continued to numb themselves, burying their heads in the sand. Hulk, now freed from his siege on the surface, quickly rushed to downtown New York City. He found no living soul there, and he roared in anger. Hulk found a direction and ran south, where the presence of life was strongest. The Atlantic coast east of the Appalachian Mountains is America's most densely populated area, and it was hardest hit by the zombie outbreak. Hulk's speed was even faster than those fathers-in-law who had practiced the sword art of exorcism. Moreover, this group was unaffected by the terrain, and even the mighty rivers could not stop him. Finally, he arrived at a city in southeastern Pennsylvania, where some stubborn Americans were holed up in their homes, trying to fight off the zombies with their guns. This was a habit Americans had gradually developed since the Great Migration. They had no faith in the government or the military, only in their own guns. Arms dealers hope that Americans will cultivate this mindset, making business easier. However, this mindset will undoubtedly lead to blind confidence, believing that as long as they have guns, they can overcome any crisis. It will also make it more difficult for the government to organize the evacuation of residents. Roar, the zombie Hulk descends, smashing into a wooden villa. With two massive hands, he scoops up a man and a woman, thrusting them directly into his mouth. With two snaps, the necks of the man and woman are severed. A truly bloody maw. Fuck. Bruce, what are you doing? 5 Iron Man suits, remotely controlled by Friday and Tony, are still too late. The Avengers on the helicarrier are filled with sadness and irritation as they watch the Hulk resort to cannibalism. They feel heartbroken and helpless over their companion's fate, yet fear a similar fate for themselves, leaving them restless. Get out, the Hulk bites off the fat flesh of the man on his right hand in 2 or 3 bites, throwing the bloody remains into the air above the Iron Man suit. A piece of armor was unable to dodge and was smashed down. The hot blood dyed the cold steel red. Chapter 2. Chapter 431 Thor vs. Hulk, the father-in-law reaps the benefits. In a rage, the zombie Hulk devoured the woman he held in his left hand. Annoyed by the flies flying overhead, he rushed to the side of the road, grabbed a streetlight, and began to dance. In the blink of an eye, 2 more Iron Man armors, unable to dodge, were bludgeoned down by the zombie Hulk. Mr. Stark, the Hulk's strength has increased, the artificial intelligence Friday warned its master, analyzing and comparing previously recorded data. Has the zombie virus unleashed his potential? Tony Stark of the main film universe frowned. This is trouble. He turned to the obese Thor beside him and pleaded, Thor, can you stop him? Carol was still over the Bohea, and her mind seemed to be shattered. She might not be able to exert even a third of her full strength. At this moment, Thor was the only one among them who could possibly subdue the zombie Hulk. Fearing Thor might be infected with a zombie virus, Tony quickly added, don't worry. I've made you a highly conductive armor to protect you from its bites, recalling the moment in the Colosseum of the Supreme Being, where he had successfully defeated the Hulk by invoking the power of Thor and reawakened Bruce Banner's consciousness. Thor, having failed to face Thanos once more, decided to take action. He stood up, picked up his Stormbreaker, and before leaving, suddenly asked, what would everyone accept if we don't knock him out? Tony and the emaciated Steve Rogers exchanged a glance, but neither did the other Avengers, as they weren't familiar with Bruce. Thor glanced around and sighed, alright, I get it. If everyone reacted, Thor would readily go along with it, as Bruce and he had experienced the fall of Asgard and had a kinship. By now, everyone understood that the zombie virus could not be eliminated, let alone cured. Whether Bruce's consciousness returned or not, he would still carry the virus within him. There was no hope, only reality. The safety of the living was more important. Thor, knowing what to do, donned the custom suit Tony had crafted for him and, Stormbreaker in hand, flew out of the helicarrier. Thankfully, it was custom-made, otherwise his fat belly wouldn't have been able to fit. After a while, Thor arrived at the city where the zombie Hulk was. He stabbed the last of the armor in the sky with a lamppost. "Hulk, remember me?" Thor lifted his visor, revealing his face, attempting a polite approach before resorting to force. "We once fought in the Colosseum." Ever since Thanos' traumatic experience, Hulk's consciousness had been suppressed by Bruce for 5 years. Especially after another gamma-ray experiment, Hulk's consciousness had sunk to its lowest point, and soon, it might even be completely obliterated. The zombie virus had, in a way, helped Hulk. Weakling, though Hulk's mind was eroded by the zombie virus, he still retained his sanity. Perhaps it was the constant stimulation the virus provided that kept him awake. "See, you still remember." Thor was delighted to see this. It would be best if he could avoid killing. "Brother, let's talk about this. Let's not eat humans, okay? What's so good about human flesh? I'll give you some Asgardian secret barbecue. You've had it before, it's amazing." The Hulk didn't even flinch. Furious, he just roared at Thor, "Get out!" Then he turned and rushed to the next house. Inside, the living were desperately trying to block the door, trembling. But the Hulk saw no reason to try, and with a single dash, he smashed through the wall. "Stop!" Seeing no way to communicate, Thor rushed forward, Stormbreaker raised high, and thunder rained down from the sky. Thor didn't realize that the Hulk chose to eat ordinary people instead of charging at him because he still had some compassion in his mind. The thunder, wrapped in Stormbreaker, spun in the air, ruthlessly slashing down at the zombie Hulk. The enraged Hulk remained sane, not foolish enough to throw his arms to block. He leaped awkwardly out of the way, barely avoiding the blow from the side and rear. The lightning bolt accompanying the axe struck Hulk, causing him great pain. Even the last bit of affection in Hulk's subconscious was overshadowed by his rage. He picked up a piece of floorboard and hurled it at the incoming Thor. Thor, clad in his armor, didn't flinch, smashing through the tiled concrete slab. The Hulk seized the opportunity and lunged forward, attempting to grab Thor with his blood-stained hands. Thor, using his armor's engines to maneuver sideways in the air, easily dodged. As Thor's attacks continued to miss, the Hulk grew increasingly furious, roaring again as his speed increased. As Thor reached the wall and attempted to wrench the slicing Stormbreaker from the wall, the Hulk's speed unexpectedly increased, and Thor's hand finally grazed him. Rage not only increased the Hulk's speed, but also his strength. The force of the blow ripped a piece of Thor's armor from his waist, sending him flying. He smashed through a wall, tumbling into the neighboring house, which collapsed. Hulk tried to give chase, but the man who owned the house, holding a shotgun, fired at him repeatedly. "Die, green monster!" The double-barreled shotgun shells swarmed the Hulk, hurting him but infuriating him. Roar! With a roar, the Hulk rushed over, grasping the paunchy man in his hands. The immense force cracked his ribs. His maw opened wide and bit off the man's belly, pulling out a string of white intestines. The zombie virus reverts creatures to their bestial nature, preying on fat and offal. With force, he squeezed out a ball of bloody blood, which Hulk swallowed. In the sky, several drones beamed back to the helicarrier, and the remaining Avengers were all horrified. Bruce Tony's face was ashen. "I don't want to." Hope Dine, the second-generation Wasp, clung to her boyfriend, Ant-Man Scott Lang, saying with lingering fear, "I absolutely don't want to become a monster like that." "That's because you didn't see your mother eat your father alive," Scott muttered inwardly. He didn't dare tell his girlfriend about the Wasp in the other universe eating Ant-Man, nor did the other Avengers. It had already happened, and dwelling on the past was pointless and would only cause unnecessary concerns for Pym Hank and his family. Pym particles might be their last hope. Sitting nearby, Nick Fury, his face dark and unnoticeable, suddenly glanced at Pym Hank. "It's time to consider preserving the flame." Black Brazneg always had a clear vision and prepared various contingency plans in advance. Thor's battle with the zombie Hulk continued. Emerging from another wrecked house, Thor saw Hulk manually squeezing juice. "Asshole, you're not the Hulk," Thor roared, his palms flashing with lightning. Stormbreaker, which had fallen from the ruins, flew back into his grasp. The Hulk would never do such a thing. A sudden plume of leaden clouds formed in the sky, and rolling thunder gathered, forming a circle around the Hulk. In the blink of an eye, the thunderbolts fell, bombarding the Hulk below like a spinning wheel of lightning. The thunderbolts were far more powerful than a shotgun, and each bolt of lightning ripped the Hulk's flesh apart. Though the wounds were small, They were painful and had a paralyzing effect. With the Hulk's natural healing ability, such minor injuries would have healed quickly. However, while the zombie virus strengthens the body and grants the infected a boost in strength and speed, it also strips away this ability. Zombies are essentially corpses, their cells inactive and unable to divide and heal themselves, effectively endowed with the ability to live forever. Originally, the zombie Hulk's body contained only the bloody holes left by the wasp's bite and gouges, but now, a vast expanse of charred flesh covered his entire body. Roar, trapped in the lightning circle, the Hulk dodged left and right, each time attempting to break free. Thor's controlled thunder repelled him. After witnessing the Hulk's juice squeezing, Thor abandoned all hope and decided to kill his former companion, now a monster, right there. The zombie virus had proven incurable, but by destroying the host's brain, it could be trapped within the corpse. The corpse could then be thrown to a lifeless moon, or even the sun. "Bruce, I hope you understand me," Thor muttered, suddenly distracted. "This would be a relief for you, too." In that moment of distraction, a red figure suddenly swooped in, biting down on the fat on his left waist, unprotected by the iron armor. "Fuck you," Thor cursed. His vital energy rapidly drained, and the fat on his body shrank at a visible rate. Recovering, Thor unleashed the power of the God of Thunder, his entire body bathed in lightning. The father-in-law, who was crouching on him, attempting to continue sucking his blood, was sent flying by the surging thunder. However, the successful eunuch only knocked over a roadside fire hydrant before stabilizing himself and leaping onto the roof of a nearby residential building with the swiftness of a rabbit. Mark Whedon wiped the blood from his lips and licked it carefully. His eyes gleamed as he continued to stare at Thor, unable to help but sigh. "My God, your essence and blood are so nourishing." Thor, an Asgardian, was already physically superior to Earthlings. After awakening the power of Thor, he gained even greater divine strength, and his essence and blood were naturally extraordinary. He had only taken a quick sip, probably less than 1/10, but Eunuch Wei felt it was even more potent than the power of the 3 eunuchs he had previously absorbed. The power of one eunuch was equivalent to the entire internal energy of a great eunuch who had practiced the exorcism sword technique for 2 or 3 years. Eunuch Wei was the lucky one who had first absorbed the essence and blood of the other eunuchs. Fate had allowed him to enjoy the benefits of his magic power early on. Later, in the chaotic battle, he absorbed the essence and internal energy of 2 more eunuchs, instantly becoming one of the strongest eunuchs currently. After leaving Westview Town, he headed south, intending to continue searching for a new eunuch, but unexpectedly encountered Thor and Hulk fighting in the small town. The aura of the strong gave Eunuch Wei, who had already seen blood, a bold and crazy idea, which led to the sneak attack just now. Without the blessing of the power of the 3 eunuchs, it would have been difficult for Eunuch Wei to succeed. However, fate is so magical. The third update, 9,000 words, went to sleep, and will continue tomorrow. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 432, The Avengers ship is sinking. Son of bitch, Thor cursed, his body instantly invaded by the zombie virus extract. Even the strongest Asgardians couldn't withstand the zombie virus destined for them. Frenzied, bloodthirsty thoughts assaulted Thor's consciousness, especially the craving for flesh and blood, which surged in waves. Roar, Thor unleashed a roar reminiscent of the Hulk. The sudden scene was beamed across the helicarrier via drone footage, and all the Avengers in the conference room jumped to their feet in shock. Thor, Steve Rogers, emaciated, saw Thor's sudden weight loss and couldn't help but feel a surge of sympathy. He'd been sucked in not long ago, and now Thor had been sucked in too. Was this going to become standard treatment for the Avengers? It's over, Tony Stark of the main movie universe gritted his teeth, slamming his fist on the metal table. Thor's infected too, the virus couldn't be cured, once infected, there was no cure. The Avengers were down another major force. Without further ado, Tony immediately ordered Friday, find Wanda. We need her powers. The AI quickly gathered extensive surveillance footage, locking onto Wanda's arrival in Westview and, naturally, detecting the massive barrier that subsequently appeared. Without dwelling on Wanda's past actions, Friday tracked her path, ultimately returning to New York City. Reminded by her younger self, Wanda abandoned her Westview illusion and raced to SWORD headquarters in New York. However, SWORD had already initiated its evacuation plan at the onset of the zombie outbreak. While significant personnel and supplies were lost along the way, Vision's body, a crucial asset, was prioritized. Wanda ultimately found only the SWORD lab where Vision had been repaired. In their haste, much footage remained undestroyed, a testament to the panic the sudden outbreak had unleashed upon SWORD. Watching the footage of SWORD researchers disemboweling Vision's corpse, Wanda's face darkened, her fury rising. Just then, Friday, who had been tracking her, located Wanda and, in a flash, hacked into the SWORD network. He placed a call directly to the lab, projecting the video feed before Wanda. "Wanda, something's happened." Steve and Tony took the stage. "Bruce and Thor have both been infected with the virus and are out of control. Return quickly, we need your strength." There was a certain air of matter-of-factness in their tone. After all, for the two Avengers leaders, summoning their allies was a perfectly normal thing. However, this very air of matter-of-factness ignited Wanda's fury. "Need my strength?" Wanda glared at the two men, then laughed. "Haha, you can really say that, Wanda, what's wrong?" Steve tried to inquire, but Tony, more experienced with women's emotions, immediately pulled him back. Tony had a bad feeling. 5 years ago, I was wiped out by Thanos, but you two didn't seem to be wiped out, right? Wanda demanded, pointing at the lab. "Do you know where this is? They disemboweled Vision's body here and conducted all sorts of research. Where were you when they were doing all this?" Steve and Tony were speechless. A flicker of guilt crossed the former's eyes, while the latter gave an awkward smile. "Don't tell me you didn't know Vision's body was taken?" Wanda raged through gritted teeth. "Or do you think he was just a robot, an object, so you don't care that his body was desecrated?" No, Steve tried to argue, but found himself without a reason. Vision's body had originally been left in Wakanda, but the king, princess, and queen had all been wiped out, leaving the remaining leaders powerless to handle the situation. As the Avengers were evacuating, they encountered the newly formed SWORD, who hadn't been present during the battle but had emerged during the cleanup. Originally seeking remnants of Thanos' army, they discovered Vision's corpse, prompting SWORD to seize it. The Avengers were mired in the despair of defeat, and Steve, as their leader, paid no mind to Vision's body, allowing SWORD to secure it. Deep down, Steve truly viewed Vision as a mere robot, and upon its death, its remains should be confiscated by the American government. After all, they belonged to the nation. At the time, Tony, his master, was still adrift in space. Later, rescued by Carol and returned to Earth, he busied himself with recuperation, marriage, and the birth of a daughter, similarly neglecting Vision's body. No matter how many excuses they offered, they could not change the fact that they had allowed Vision's body to be taken by SWORD. "How? Is this what you call a companion?" Wanda scoffed. "Remember them when you need them, and discard them when they're no longer valuable." Wanda, seething with anger, unleashed a roar that pierced their hearts. "If you truly considered Vision a friend, would you allow his body to be desecrated?" Steve and Tony, caught in the video, fell silent. They had no excuse. At that moment, they both sincerely felt that sacrificing themselves or hiding in another universe would be better, at least to avoid having to face this rebuke that cut to the heart. "I will retrieve Vision's body myself, and from now on, I have nothing to do with you." Wanda waved her hand vigorously, and a crimson ball of magical energy slammed into the light screen, shattering the wall along with it. Aboard the helicarrier, the other Avengers who had overheard the conversation had varying expressions. Ant-Man Scott Lang and the Wasp Hope Knight exchanged a glance, as did Pim Henke and his wife. Seeing the Avengers crumble, the family inevitably considered jumping ship. The Avengers were doomed, and it was time for them to fend for themselves. Nick Fury, however, frowned. He certainly didn't feel any guilt. If Thanos hadn't wiped Vision's body out 5 years ago, the little guys from SWORD wouldn't have gotten their hands on it. After all, the Avengers was his most celebrated creation, and seeing it shattered, Nick Fury couldn't help but feel a touch of sadness. Just a touch, not much. Black Boiled Egg was a pragmatist. Now that the Avengers were doomed, he wouldn't linger, especially since he had more important things to do. Pim Henke excused himself from the meeting room with his wife, daughter, and future son-in-law, and Nick Fury took the opportunity to follow. With no hope of reinforcement, they could only watch as Thor, On screen, rapidly lost control and charged towards Mark Whedon, who had attacked him. Having absorbed the power of the three lords and a portion of Thor's essence, Whedon's strength skyrocketed, allowing him to unleash his own magical abilities and engage the frenzied Thor in a fierce exchange of blows. Left alone, the Hulk, driven by hunger, rushed towards the nearby residential areas. This was a typical American residential area, filled with 2- and 3-story brick and wood villas. While seemingly occupying a large area, the population was relatively small. After the zombie Hulk devoured the entire neighborhood, he discovered only the 2 men engaged in the battle remained. The problem was, both carried the virus, making them the zombies' natural counterparts. Only living humans could satisfy his hunger, and zombies wouldn't eat zombies. Hulk stared at the 2 men, then turned and ran south, searching for new food. While the zombie Hulk didn't eat zombies, the zombie uncle was intrigued by his abundant blood. Thor wore the iron armor Tony had specially prepared for him. Had the Hulk not torn off a piece earlier, Yuanchu would have been unable to execute a sneak attack. Despite his fury, Thor instinctively protected his waist to avoid further attacks. After a while, finding himself unable to gain an advantage, Yuanchu acted decisively, using a counterattack to retreat. Using his agility, he left a trail of afterimages, chasing the Hulk in his direction. Seeing the Hulk's low intelligence, Yuanchu thought he might be able to hold his ground. Now, for these eunuchs who had mastered the mystical arts, time was of the essence. Whoever could absorb the most powerful beings in the shortest time would become the strongest. Their minds, clouded by the magic, they no longer cared about Dongfang Bubei's warnings, reveling in the exhilaration of growing stronger. Possessed with power, they even considered Dongfang Bubei merely a mediocre figure. Once they had absorbed enough powerful beings, they could easily make him kneel down and chant conquer. With Yuanchu gone, only the frantic Thor remained, venting his anger by swinging his axe and destroying buildings. Because the virus extract, processed by Lin Hao, was even purer than the original zombie virus, Thor retained his sanity, unlike zombies infected with ordinary viruses who relied on luck to retain some sanity. Thanks to this restrained mind, Thor was still suppressing his cannibalistic urges, but his rage only grew. "Fuck you, bitch, asshole," Thor cursed non-stop, trying to vent his anger by expending his energy. "Tisk tisk, is this my stupid brother?" A mocking voice suddenly came from the street. It was a voice Thor was very familiar with. Thor, who had become thinner than before, suddenly turned around and saw a familiar face with his familiar expression of wanting a beating. "Loki, father, he actually only saw me at first sight and didn't see you. He's really a laughing man." Loki was clearly adding fuel to the fire. Odin glared at him and scolded with a smile, "If you have the guts, go say this to your Thor. Are you afraid of him?" Loki said proudly, "I am no longer the same person I used to be. No matter which Thor is, I will knock him down." Odin smiled and shook his head, then walked towards Thor. "Father." Thor's eyes inexplicably overflowed with tears, and he suppressed his desire to eat people and kept backing away, fearing that he would lose control of himself. "Your reaction is worth my trip." Odin smiled kindly at Thor. "I have a way to help you, but you have to find another way to survive." Chapter 1. Chapter 433 Two Choices in the End of America. Thor seemed to hesitate, but the overwhelming impact of the zombie virus quickly overwhelmed any remaining concerns about his stance. Thor's stance had been established since his first appearance in New Mexico. He cared about Earth and protected it, but he considered America its representative. Since his team was almost entirely American, he naturally sided with the American side. However, Odin and Loki before him were on the side of SHIE. Although neither Tony Stark nor Steve Rogers revealed what had happened in the alternate universe, their fear of SHIER clearly indicated they were not on the same page. This put Thor somewhat in a difficult position. After all, the Odin and Loki before him were not his father and brother. But driven by the desire to survive and regain his sanity, Thor ultimately accepted Odin's favor. At worst, he would simply avoid future conflicts between SHIER and the Avengers. Thor appeared to be a tough guy, but he also had his moments of delicacy. Odin didn't care what he thought. He had come because he didn't want to see Thor transform into a man-eating demon right in front of him. That would be even more unbearable than killing Thor right in front of him. Perhaps this was the profound love of a father. Having sought Lin Hao's permission, Odin slid closer to Thor. His right hand was clad in a red glove with a black skull pattern, the very same gauntlet Wanda had used when her soul had been slapped out of her. With a resounding snap, Odin slapped Thor across the face. "Father, well done." Loki, standing behind him, was overcome with excitement, eager to take his place. Unfortunately, he lacked a soul particle within him, otherwise he would have fought for the blow. Odin's slap was powerful, but Thor's body didn't fly away. Instead, his soul swirled across several streets, collapsing several buildings along the way. "Father, your slap is still so powerful." Thor's spirit emerged from the rubble, stunned by his body still bound by Odin's golden ropes, and glanced down at his hands. Real touch, real pain, and an all-too-real belly. What the hell? Thor was bewildered. Why is my soul still fat? His body had already successfully lost weight, so why was his soul still fat? I'm in this state, and I still can't escape the diet, idiot. This proves you're essentially a fat man, Loki scoffed. I taught you a long time ago, there's no free lunch in the universe. Odin, controlling Thor's now zombified body, questioned his spirit. The virus can't be cured, and your body can't be restored. I can ask the boss for a new clone for you, but whether it can be perfectly integrated depends on your luck. Or you can survive in your current state, but ordinary people won't be able to see you. As he spoke, Odin glanced at the drone circling overhead. Although only Tony and Steve were left in the helicarrier's conference room, they were still keeping an eye on Thor's condition. Seeing Odin appear, they frowned, knowing that this Odin came from another universe, had once smashed Thor's hammer into the White House, and his stance was clearly not pro-American. They only saw Odin slap Thor, but Thor didn't fly away, only roaring even louder. A distant building seemed to collapse as if struck by something. The two could see no spirit, only Thor bound by golden ropes of light. Could it be that SWIE possesses a means of controlling the virus? Tony's mouth tasted bitter. His wisdom and pride suffering another blow. Steve, standing beside him, patted him on the back with a frail hand, admonishing, "Don't lose heart. There's still much to do." The Avengers were falling apart, but Steve, the unyielding warrior, remained undeterred. Thor, present at the scene, considered for a moment and replied to Odin, "Father, please dispose of this body. If it's not too much trouble, I'd prefer a new one. At least with a new body, he would have a real right eye." The Avengers' pursuit of the Hulk ended in disastrous defeat. Not only did they fail to prevent their former companion from becoming a man-eating demon, but they also lost Thor. Their entire elite force was annihilated, leaving only an ordinary man and a skinny mascot. Seeing the situation irreversible, Black Egg once again began his magical operation. Dr. Pym, I believe you have a clear understanding of the current situation. We should prepare a backup plan. Before Pym Hank left SHIELD, Nick Fury had already climbed to the rank of level 8 agent, equivalent to Phil Coulson today, and the two had previously had some business dealings. Pym Hank, familiar with Nick Fury's methods, gave him a deep look and chuckled, "Your so-called backup plan should involve my Pym particles, right?" As a veteran, Nick Fury stopped beating around the bush and spoke frankly, "This universe's solar system is under lockdown, and Earth is overrun with an incurable zombie virus. It's no longer suitable for human survival. Fortunately, Tony previously created a groundbreaking device that can solve our current predicament." After Lin Hao snapped his fingers and brought back half of the life in the main universe, Ant-Man Scott Lang naturally confessed their previous plan to find the Infinity Stones to his girlfriend and father-in-law. Tony's invention of a time machine once again made Pym Hank feel his age. "The stock of Pym particles won't be able to carry many people," Nick Fury interrupted. "Thanos' army only used half a tube of Pym particles before, which means they can cover large containers. Compared to Pym particles, we need a few Noah's Arks right now." That, Pym Hank's eyes lit up, and he asked, "Do you have the technology to build a spaceship?" "I don't, but my friend does." Nick Fury smiled and said, "Besides, the Ark doesn't need to fly into outer space. It just needs to be able to fly inside the Earth. It doesn't even need to take off. It just needs to be strong enough." "Okay, you convinced me," Pym Hank nodded, but emphasized, "But you're responsible for convincing the surviving bigwigs. Even automated factories need raw materials. Don't worry, I'm sure of this. Not only in America, but those bigwigs in Europe will definitely want to see hope now." Nick Fury was confident. He had seen the nature of bigwigs countless times before. "You take care of the Pym particles. I'll contact the manufacturing plant. Don't tell Tony and Steve yet, they're a bit of a moral nut. Once the preparations are complete, Tony won't stand by and watch. This plan hinges on three key elements: PIM particles, a large ark, and Tony's time machine. With these three things, the surviving humans can evacuate this damned universe. As for how many people the ark can hold, well, it's bound to have plenty of space for the wealthy and the social elite. Unaware that Black Egg is behind their backs, Tony and Steve are using artificial intelligence to analyze the range of zombie activity. The zombie virus has spread from New York, and the southeastern states are falling one after another. What about Atlanta? It's at a relatively high altitude here, and during the war, it was a key battleground between the North and the South. If we use the Iron Legion to guard the passage, and then use the alien technology mastered by the raccoons to build a protective shield and filter the water, we can completely transform it into a large settlement. If that's the case, then we can also build multiple settlements on the western plateau. Once the zombies have consumed the food from the outside world, they will definitely converge on the settlements. We only need to concentrate heavy firepower to eliminate them, and then dig deep into the ground to send the wreckage to the sun by spacecraft. Many people will die, but America and the human race will be preserved. Over 1 billion people on the Far East continent have preserved the human race. Talking about that country is unavoidable, and the clouds that still float over the Black Sea are unavoidable. They can only turn a blind eye. Otherwise, it would be a disaster for them. They have protected the entire country, with a population over 4 times that of the United States, but apart from a few expatriates who died due to untimely rescue, the lives of the vast majority of people have not been affected. Look at America, the self-proclaimed overlord of Earth and beacon of civilization, but its situation is utterly shambles. Even if the plan ultimately succeeds, even if only 1 in 10 people survive, they'd be lucky. Steve and Tony, still harboring some sense of conscience, busied themselves planning settlements, hoping to save as many ordinary people as possible. However, Nick Fury had already convinced the American dignitaries with a few words. The entire solar system was sealed off, so why stay? Although they hadn't left the solar system for years, having hope but not being able to achieve it and having absolutely no hope were two different things. So, both sides began to push forward their respective plans. Tony, leveraging Stark Industries' resources, began mass-producing the Iron Man suits. As soon as they rolled off the production line, Friday controlled them and flew them to the city planned as the future settlement, along with a fleet of automated construction equipment. With the zombie virus shattering American social order, Tony no longer had to worry about industry regulations and could freely unleash his advanced technology. It's well known that high-tech companies, driven by capital, don't release all their advanced technologies all at once. Instead, they release only slightly more advanced products that can capture market share, using this strategy to maximize profits. As a genius inventor in the Marvel Universe, Tony Stark developed artificial intelligence in the 1990s and possesses numerous other advanced technologies. However, he was previously subject to industry restrictions, preventing him from flooding the market with overly advanced technologies. Furthermore, as a profit-driven arms dealer, he was not one to actively break the rules. Now, with the zombie apocalypse, no longer subject to industry regulations, Tony unleashed his entire technological arsenal to save as many lives as possible. Chapter 434 Peter Parker's Painful Decision. For several students at Midtown High School, the days following the Spark incident were dominated by escape. Their anticipated final year travel plans were put on hold, and their daily preoccupation became survival and avoiding being eaten by zombies. Peter, you need to get some rest. Atlanta's still a long way away, Aunt May said, heartbroken for her nephew. Peter had protected them all during the evacuation from New York, even staying awake at night to avoid zombie attacks. Peter Parker's spider sense became their team's radar, helping them avoid countless zombies along the way. America had entered the apocalypse, and Spider-Man no longer needed to keep his secrets. The journey was fraught with danger, and he had to protect his family and classmates. I'm not tired. Mr. Stark said there are fewer zombies ahead. If we move faster, we can mitigate the danger. Peter forced a smile. He turned and glanced at the group behind him, his best friend Ned Leeds, the girl he loved, Michelle Jones, and some close friends from Midtown High. On the day Lin Hao brought back half of all life in the universe, Peter followed Stephen Strange back to Earth from Thanos' homeworld. Expecting a tough battle, they discovered their enemies had already been annihilated. Thanos' army was shattered, only to face an even more formidable foe, an invincible zombie virus. Peter, as an Avenger, enjoyed special privileges, traveling aboard the helicarrier with his family, away from the zombies on the ground. But when the zombie outbreak unfolded, and he saw his classmates at Midtown High being torn apart by the zombies, Spider-Man's chivalrous heart unsurprisingly erupted. Peter resolutely stepped forward to rescue his classmates, even going so far as to reveal his identity and lead a refugee group southward. He naively asked Tony Stark if he could help, but Tony could only send him 2 unmanned suits and some wilderness survival supplies, no transportation. The crowds were too numerous. Even Peter's classmates, including their families, numbered over 100 people, and more people continued to join the evacuation as the group continued to gather, as humans naturally tend to flock together in times of crisis. As they journeyed south, they noticed Peter's ability to proactively avoid the zombies and, even when faced with unexpected situations, his immense strength to pull through. More and more people joined, and the group now numbered over 3,000. With so many people came trouble, and unreasonable demands abounded. Peter's personality naturally overwhelmed him, but Michelle, a fierce and capable person with a knack for management and leadership, was fortunate. With the help of 2 armored warriors and several drastic maneuvers, the group managed to maintain some semblance of order. But fatigue was mounting. Peter was tired, and so were the ordinary refugees. "Peter, we might not be able to hold on any longer," Michelle approached, his expression grave. "We've been walking for 5 days straight, with only 4 hours of rest a day. We're practically at breaking point." Ned, once overweight at over 200 pounds, had lost weight at a noticeable rate. "We've only just arrived in Maryland. Atlanta is still over 1,000 kilometers away. Even if we make it safely, it'll take at least a month. Mr. Stark can provide us with food and water, but so many people can't survive a 1,000-kilometer migration. We're not the army." "How about finding a few more buses?" Ned gasped. The true leaders of this group were these 3 teenagers, who had experienced the sparkling extinction and hadn't even graduated from high school. If it weren't for the iron armor and drones hovering overhead, which only obeyed Peter's orders, there was no way over 3,000 people would have accepted the leadership of 3 young men. During the evacuation from New York, they had taken a bus, but were soon stuck on a bridge. After repeatedly finding abandoned vehicles and crossing fields when roads were blocked, they managed to cross Pennsylvania and reach Maryland in just 5 days. Otherwise, it would be a miracle for such a bloated, unprofessional group to even walk 40 kilometers a day. But there are so many people, and with everyone's luggage, we'll need at least 60 or 70 buses, Peter said, feeling overwhelmed. After these 5 days, Peter hadn't yet grasped the principle that with great power comes great responsibility, but he had already deeply understood the challenges of leadership. It's not the lack of resources that's worrying, but the inequality of them was the most profound lesson Peter had learned during these 5 days. Any distribution of supplies must be fair, otherwise there will inevitably be those who express dissatisfaction. Not everyone could pack their belongings before fleeing. In fact, most people fled in panic, alone. Even though everyone was constantly scavenging for useful items along the way, no one was willing to selflessly share, waiting for Peter to distribute the supplies delivered by Mr. Stark. Initially, there were only a few people, and a few buses could still accommodate them. While crossing Pennsylvania, the survivors heard about Spider-Man's migration. Iron Man and Captain America then announced a colonial construction plan over the radio network. Seeing hope, the survivors flocked to the area, causing the group's numbers to swell dramatically. Peter couldn't afford to discriminate at this point. "Let's just let the zombies come and eat us all," Ned said, helpless and furious. "At this rate, we'll be blocked by zombies sooner or later." Michelle held a tablet, delivered by Tony Stark via drone. It displayed Friday's reconnaissance of zombie activity areas and the planned migration route. Currently, there weren't many zombies in Southern Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina. If they moved quickly, they would be relatively safe. However, once the zombie virus spread, the area ahead would be a poisonous zone. If there's really no other way, just adopt Ned's plan and head into the zombie zone to reduce the burden on the group, Michelle offered decisively. Seeing Peter's expression of shock and resignation, Michelle had to forcefully say, "I'll guide the way. You just pretend you don't know." Peter gritted his teeth. "Peter, you can't save everyone. You'll have to make choices." Michelle laid bare the harsh reality for Peter. Seeing Peter lost in agony, Michelle turned to Ned and said, "We'll do this." Meeting Michelle's resolute gaze, Ned nodded solemnly. Peter had always protected them, Now it was their turn to make the difficult decision for him, to bear the emotional torment. Soon, the group began to quietly shift direction, unnoticed by the exhausted men at the rear. Chapter 435, If there is danger, why not let a superhero take over? Why is he like this? Peter Parker, from the base universe, blended in among the refugees. Using magic, he overheard a conversation between his alter ego and his companions, and suddenly felt a surge of frustration. He's 5 years older than me. Why, if it were you, could you possibly save these people? Gwen Stacy, standing beside him, rolled her eyes. I'll fight to the bitter end. Peter's expression was resolute. We're not facing an enemy, we're facing a virus. Your persistence will only turn you into a zombie, and become an even greater threat to the refugees. Gwen glared coldly. Unable to convince her, Peter immediately sought help, turning to Ned Leeds on the other side. Ned, what do you say? I'll burn them all. Ned was eager to try. The fiery curse is best used against zombies. That, Peter faltered. As expected, this answer was very Ned. Ned, you're a true combat genius. Gwen's eyes lit up at the words. If the zombie virus can't be eradicated, the fiery blaze will continue to burn, and there's no need to worry about spreading to surrounding flammable materials, as they'll be consumed immediately, but there will be more fires burning continuously on the land. This time, it was Peter's turn to roll his eyes. As long as we can kill the zombies and control the spread of the virus, our goal will be achieved, and the mission is accomplished. Gwen had the air of someone who, having completed a mission, didn't care about the raging flood. The three of them had witnessed a battle of gods the last time, and had only dared to stay away. Upon discovering the zombie virus outbreak, they immediately used their portkeys to return to the vicinity of the portal and quickly pass through it back to their own universe. Not long after, the three children accepted another mission from Principal Tom, to find a way to control the zombies. This mission wasn't entirely unfounded, as zombies had also appeared in America, the base universe, and Steve Rogers, leader of the Lone Star Republic, had also pleaded with Hogwarts for assistance. Despite America's blockade, preventing the zombie virus from spreading to other countries, Principal Tom, demonstrating the responsibility of a legendary wizard, dispatched his most beloved apprentice to personally handle the matter. This deeply touched Steve, impressed by Principal Tom's sense of justice. After accepting the mission, the three children departed from the New York portal and encountered Peter organizing a retreat southward. Seeing their alter egos, Peter and Ned were intrigued and decided to infiltrate the group and observe their alter egos. It felt like showing off to friends and family after becoming rich, especially since the target of their boasting was an alter ego. After all, men remain young until death, and they were already young. Gwen couldn't understand the men's childishness, but since this mission had no specific destination, anywhere was fine. With 2 votes against 1, Gwen had no choice but to go along. Using Polyjuice Potion, the three transformed their appearances and infiltrated the refugee group. They had secretly dealt with a few zombie critters along the way, and now they were ready to make a big splash. Michelle Jones was a decisive person, swiftly executing decisions. The refugee group quietly shifted direction, gradually straying from the safe route Friday had planned for them. As an AI, multitasking was fundamental. So even though Friday was preoccupied with other tasks, he immediately alerted his master. Mr. Stark, Peter's refugee group has strayed from the safe route. At this moment, countless refugee groups were swarming across America. Tony, relying on AI and a continuously churning supply of Iron Man armor, was executing the Doomsday Fortress project as planned. While securing the cities planned to become fortresses, he dispatched Iron Man armor and drones to guide the refugees toward the fortress. The helicarrier, serving as the command center, hovered over America. Tony's energy was limited, and he couldn't possibly monitor every refugee group. But he was deeply concerned about Peter. 5 years ago, Peter died in his arms, and in those 5 years, Tony's longing for Peter and his feelings for him had only deepened. Knowing his master's fondness for Peter, Friday interrupted his busy schedule. What's going on? Tony frowned after just glancing at the map. They're actually approaching the zombie horde. This is the previous conversation. Friday played Michelle's proposal. They weren't shy about the drone overhead as they discussed their strategy, especially since Michelle was clutching a tablet. Nonsense, was Tony's immediate reaction. Quick, tell them to return to safety immediately. Mr. Stark, the interstates from Maryland to Virginia are completely blocked, and there are multiple groups of zombies roaming around. Not only will they not be able to find a vehicle, but even if they could, they wouldn't be able to get through. Friday offered his opinion, based on pure rationality. Given the current situation, splitting the 3,000-man group into smaller groups will ensure more refugees reach Atlanta. It's obvious that the refugees won't voluntarily break away from the main group. Tony was speechless, a wave of irritation rising up in him. He paced around the office, smashing things. He tried to order a halt several times, but gave up. He's still just a kid. Tony finally collapsed on the sofa, muttering, he shouldn't have to bear all this. Steve Rogers, a emaciated figure, heard the commotion and walked over, patting Tony on the shoulder without saying anything. The apocalypse is cruel. To survive, one must harden their hearts. Peter Parker, at the front of the refugee group, was in a daze. He appeared to have made no decision, yet he simply agreed when his companions carried it out. Perhaps this was the price of growing up. In the past, he would have naively tried to save everyone, just like when he used silk thread to force the slit ferry together, brave but determined. Now, having experienced more and witnessed the horrors of the zombie virus, he had abandoned his innocence and distanced himself from his childhood. After walking for about half an hour, a small group of zombies suddenly appeared ahead. Michelle shouted at the top of her voice, "Zombies! Take cover!" The group of over 3,000 refugees immediately dispersed skillfully, each seeking shelter. It was impossible for them to have never seen zombies along the way, but they could only consider themselves generally safe. Peter charged forward, just as he had before. He'd fought many battles in the past 5 days. If it weren't for his nano-armor, he'd likely have been vulnerable to the virus. "Oh my God, there's a horde behind us," Michelle's voice, carried by the drones overhead, echoed throughout the area. She'd chosen this position carefully. A small group of zombies at the front wouldn't upset the refugees, but rather give them a glimmer of hope. Once the larger horde was drawn in, they wouldn't wait for Peter to defeat the zombies, nor would they believe he could win. As for going up to help, don't be ridiculous. We ordinary people would just be serving food, okay? If there's danger, why not let a superhero take over? Peter Parker is Spider-Man. Seeing the horde of zombies charging in from afar, the refugees finally lost their minds and fled. Ned, however, seized the opportunity to gather his familiar classmates and their families and quickly evacuate to safety. Chapter 436 Arsonist Ned, I only know how to set fires, not recycle. Out of compassion and a sense of chivalry, Peter Parker chose to shoulder the responsibility of over 3,000 people for 5 days, but reality forced him to abandon his burden. In this moment of uplift and downfall, he failed to achieve the supposedly frivolous enlightenment of Buddhism, only to feel his young heart shattered into 8 pieces. Before the zombie hordes arrived in the distance, Peter fought and retreated, trying to draw the hordes away from the refugees, hoping to provide them with a final shield and also facilitate his own quiet retreat. Seeing the zombies gathering around him, and the prospect of himself being in trouble if he didn't leave, Peter activated his armor's camouflage system, blending in with the surroundings, blocking out scent and heat, making him a target. Just as Peter was about to escape the zombie encirclement, 3 figures suddenly rushed towards him, their speed exceeding even that of Peter, even with his armor's added bonus. "Don't go. It's dangerous," Peter shouted, not even bothering to retreat. The 3 strangers each pulled a small wooden stick from their pockets and waved it. A transparent, spherical membrane appeared on their bodies. Then, in unison, they aimed at the zombies and shouted, "Fire curse!" As Peter watched in astonishment, thick flames erupted from the tips of the sticks, more powerful than a flamethrower. Even more remarkable, even after the sticks stopped blasting, the flames showed no sign of weakening. Instead, as if alive, they automatically sought out flammable material, devouring the surrounding zombies, burning ever more fiercely. In a matter of moments, the small town, nestled along the state highway, was engulfed in flames. "See? I told you the fire curse is perfect for dealing with zombies," Ned Leeds exclaimed triumphantly, watching the zombies wailing in the flames. Peter, cloaked in invisibility, heard a familiar voice and gasped in disbelief. "That sounds like Ned." Ned, a teenage apprentice from the base universe, had a hoarse voice. If Peter hadn't been close friends, he wouldn't have remembered him. Peter uncloaked his armor and shouted to the 3, "Are you wizards?" Naturally, the 3 little ones had already spotted his location and turned to glance at him. By then, the effects of the Polyjuice potion had worn off, revealing the true forms of little Peter and little Ned, startling the older Peter. You, Big Peter muttered incoherently, removing his helmet, his face filled with curiosity and confusion. Because the three young wizards had long been imbued with the power of the spider totem bestowed upon them by the Weaver, and their training at Hogwarts, they had developed quickly. So, even though little Peter was 5 years younger than Big Peter, he was only a few centimeters shorter, his features already fully developed, making him almost identical to Big Peter. On the other hand, Little Ned and Big Ned looked quite different, the biggest difference being, one was chubby, the other muscular. What are you looking at? Have you ever seen such a handsome wizard? Little Peter, hands on his hips, looked down on his alter ego. Though young, he was formidable. He felt he could single-handedly take on at least 3 of the men standing before him. It was certainly worth showing off. Are you from a parallel universe? Big Peter took a few steps forward curiously, constantly studying his alter ego. He felt the other's voice was childish. But they were about the same height. Portals to alternate universes are now appearing across the United States, and the American military on the other side has even launched an invasion. Before the zombie virus outbreak, the hot news online was dominated by this theme: mysterious invaders, America from another time and space. Shocking. America is invading America. For a while, as the other half of life was brought back, every household was thrown into chaos, and the previous hot topics were quickly overwhelmed by various human tragedies. Then, after the zombie virus outbreak, apart from the initial headlines, there was no news and no internet. Reporters and programmers were either eaten by zombies, transformed into cannibalistic zombies, or fleeing in panic. Who had the energy to maintain the website? However, some people who cared about current affairs still knew about the portals appearing in America and the existence of alternate universes. What else? Could this universe's Peter Parker be as powerful as me? Little Peter boasted, so much so that Gwen Stacy, standing beside him, wanted to slap him. Big Peter, already feeling down, faced his alter ego, and his self-doubt grew. I'm truly useless. I failed to protect everyone, haha. As a good neighbor to New Yorkers, I ultimately failed to protect them, Big Peter scoffed bitterly. But most of these refugees are from Pennsylvania, not New Yorkers, the honest Ned chimed in. Oh, Big Peter was stunned, his emotions tangled. Gwen and Little Peter glared at him. Terrified, Ned ducked his head, muttering, that's how it is. Seeing his alter ego sink into despair, Little Peter lost interest and the desire to show off. After all, showing off and getting slapped in the face is a whole process. Without even one element, you lose the sense of participation. What's the point of entertaining yourself? Thinking of this, Little Peter glared at his best friend again, a slightly resentful look. Are you feeling the heat? Gwen frowned. Is it really that hot in Maryland? This isn't Florida. Ned was quite fleshy and couldn't stand the heat. Oh, Big Peter pointed behind the 3 little ones, reminding them, your magical flames are still burning, Walter. The 3 little ones spun around. The town's buildings had been completely burned by the fiend fire, and the zombies' flesh and bones had been reduced to ash. But a sticky layer of liquid coated the ground, still burning. No matter how hard the fiend fire burned, it showed no sign of diminishing. How could this be? Gwen stared, bewildered. They were experts in playing with fire, having used the fiend fire spell countless times before. They had long since studied the burning time of most flammable materials, such as human bodies, buildings, and trees. The average human and animal body could only withstand a few to 10 seconds of fiend fire, and reinforced concrete could only withstand 2 or 3 minutes. That was why Gwen dared to allow the violent Ned to set fires so many times. After all, as long as they stayed away from urban areas and forests, the fiend fire would soon consume everything. Yet, the viscous liquid before them was completely impervious to the fiend fire's burning. These are probably blood cells harboring the zombie virus. I heard from Mr. Stark that this virus can't be eradicated and persists in the bloodstream, Big Peter explained to the 3 little ones. What do we do now? Little Ned and Little Peter looked at Gwen. If we leave it alone, won't this sea of fire continue to burn? I only know how to set fires, not how to recycle them. The principal didn't teach me, Little Ned said angrily. If these liquids can continue to burn, Little Peter's mind suddenly switched to science, his face filled with joy. Would that mean we've helped humanity find an eternal energy source, idiot? Gwen shouted angrily. What kind of material are you going to find that can withstand the constant burning of the fiend fire? Little Peter faltered, but unwilling to give up his great scientific dream. He insisted, "We can find a way." Gwen ignored him, only focused on solving the problem at hand. Chapter 437: The Calm Before the Storm. After shedding their burdens, Peter Parker's refugee group shrank dramatically, leaving only his classmates and family members, less than 100 people. "I don't understand. Aren't we here on a mission? Why are we scavengers?" Little Ned, riding his broomstick, occasionally waved his wand at the state highway below, casting shattering or restoring spells to clear obstacles or repair damaged roads. Little Peter and Gwen, also on broomsticks, did the same. "Aunt May is here, your parents are here, and those familiar classmates too. It's not good to watch them get eaten by zombies, is it?" Little Peter wasn't enjoying the compliments from acquaintances from another time and space. He just couldn't keep his smile down. Gwen shook her head, unresponsive. After they accidentally created an inextinguishable fire, Gwen immediately used her portkey to return to New York. Once back in her own universe, she informed Principal Tom and her ally, Captain Rogers. Principal Tom was currently collecting samples near the Sea of Fire, intending to conduct in-depth research, ultimately aiming to gather more data on the zombie virus for Lin Hao. The three children followed Peter's group of refugees south, intending to first deliver them to the Atlanta settlement before engaging with more zombies nearby. After all, many of their acquaintances were in this group, and while they had never crossed paths before, the sight of these familiar faces made the three children unable to remain indifferent. Two buses, following behind the three magicians, sped along the highway. "That's so cool," Big Ned exclaimed excitedly from the bus ahead. "Magic is so cool." He turned to look at his best friend with a hint of disdain. "Peter, your superpowers aren't as good as magic, I'm so sorry." Big Peter rolled his eyes. "Peter, is that you from that alternate universe?" Aunt May asked excitedly. "They look just like you. Not only do we look alike, we even share the same genes." Big Peter felt a sense of despair. With the arrival of his alter ego, everyone around him focused their attention on him. It was like a relative suddenly bringing home a girlfriend who looked an awful lot like him. Something seemed off. "Wait, this is America? That was fine. Is there me in that alternate universe too? Would I be younger and prettier? Help." Big Peter had to squeeze to the back row and sit next to Michelle Jones. Seeing his MJ remain calm, Peter was relieved. "That's okay. You're really different from them." But then Michelle suddenly asked, "Who's that girl with them? Is she your elementary school classmate? Why haven't I heard you mention her?" A faint murderous aura surrounded Peter, as if saying the wrong thing would bring about calamity. "No. I've never seen her. Ask Ned if you don't believe me." Peter, for once, was quick-witted. Michelle narrowed her eyes slightly, a faint smile playing. "Look how scared you are." "I was just asking." Peter breathed a sigh of relief. A jealous woman is scarier than a zombie. The addition of the three magicians made the rest of the journey much easier, and they reached Atlanta in just 3 days. Atlanta had transformed into a vast construction site, with countless construction robots bustling about. A towering wall surrounded the city, and armies of steel armor floated in the sky, poised to spring into action if zombies approached. Seeing this scene, Peter and his friends felt a rare sense of security. "We're finally here. We shouldn't have to worry about zombies inside anymore, right?" "Peter, quickly contact Mr. Stark and ask if he's prepared accommodations for us." The high school students were still sighing with emotion and shock, but their parents were quick to react. Where there are people, there are underworlds. Where there are people, there are social classes. Before them lay a doomsday fortress. In this apocalyptic world, the existing order was shattered, and a new one was about to take shape. Who could seize the initiative at such a time would secure a place at the top of the pyramid? Who wouldn't want a good life? Peter was completely bewildered, but Michelle immediately caught on. She pulled out her tablet and played the resettlement regulations drawn up by Stark. "Welcome to the Atlanta settlement. Construction work is currently very intense, and we need more survivors to contribute. As everyone knows, America, and indeed the world, is facing an apocalyptic crisis. The established production order has been disrupted, and daily necessities are in short supply. Therefore, the settlement will implement a labor for goods distribution principle. Every adult survivor will be required to work in exchange for the necessities of life. Minors will continue their education in school. The good news is that the school will no longer charge tuition, and teachers will teach instead of work, earning higher than average pay. Anyone who refuses to accept these regulations will not be accepted into the settlement." After Tony Stark finished his explanation in the video, Everyone on the bus fell silent. Not getting any privileges, yet still having to work? The less advantaged families were only slightly disappointed, but quickly adjusted. However, the more affluent families frowned. After visiting the base universe, Tony and Steve from the main film universe were somewhat influenced by the other Captain America. Furthermore, as a man of wisdom, Tony naturally understood that this management method was best suited for the Fortress of Doom. The greatest resistance to implementing this rule came from the established upper class. However, these individuals had already fled the city at the onset of the zombie outbreak, some fleeing to other countries to avoid the spread, while others retreated to their suburban estates, all facing less than favorable outcomes. The zombie virus isn't a war. It doesn't adhere to the Western principle of preferential treatment of the aristocracy and treat everyone equally. Within 10 days of the outbreak, 6 out of 10 prominent figures in America, and indeed the world, were wiped out. Even in hiding, these individuals still required a large number of servants to serve or protect them. Once someone was bitten by a mosquito, the infection could easily spread within the sealed-off estates. Only large corporations could afford to create absolutely clean living environments. Smaller corporations simply didn't have the resources. Naturally, the casualties among ordinary people were greater, but there were always pockets of survivors. Even in the most hostile environments, as long as there was a glimmer of hope, humans, like cockroaches, would persevere. Unable to enter the city, they were forced to die outside. Several families, once well off, were forced to accept the settlement's regulations. After all, these settlements were all reclaimed by Tony Stark using his Iron Man suit and drones. He had labored to cleanse the city, build a wall, and, in the future, construct a city-wide energy shield. They just work, consider it work for Stark Industries. It was so easy to get into such a prestigious company before. With this in mind, the refugees accepted their situation. After a few days, they found the settlement to be truly safe. While the energy shield wasn't yet complete, mosquitoes and small animals infected with a zombie virus occasionally bit people. They were quickly dealt with by the Iron Man suits controlled by the AI. Friday had already mastered a set of procedures. The refugees had regained a rare peace and stability, but this calm was only a false alarm before the storm. Chapter 438 Every failure makes you wiser. Thank you. P.S. This chapter is a bit watery. Please subscribe if you mind. Thanos' snap 5 years ago wasn't without benefits for America in the main film universe. After its population halved, America ushered in the AI era, focusing on automated production to keep productivity within the United States. As we all know, America's 3 major advantages are its American freedom attracting global talent and capital, its oil dollar hegemony, and its global military presence. They leverage their talent and financial advantages to innovate in various fields, seizing global markets with high-tech products and reaping excess profits. At the same time, they reap global wealth through the energy-linked interest rate hikes and cuts, and ensure that all of this wealth flows back to America through their global military presence. Therefore, technology, the dollar, and the military are America's 3 core competitive strengths. To maintain its leadership and sustainable profitability, America must maintain its technological leadership, dollar hegemony, and a strong military deterrent. Our 3 major advantages are a comprehensive industrial system, a highly skilled workforce of industrial engineers, and a vast domestic consumer market. After joining the WTO, the Sino-US cooperation model has been one in which the US provides high technology, while China engages in large-scale production, with products sold worldwide. Both countries benefit, but the US reaps the lion's share. To change this low-profit model, the newly established Ministry of Science and Technology will mobilize national efforts for technological innovation, completely breaking away from the existing economic growth model. However, the U.S., accustomed to easy profits, wants to return to the old international division of labor, where we produce and they collect the revenue. This is the root cause of trade friction. While the U.S. boasts the world's best talent in R&D, its industrial system has been disintegrating since the period of deindustrialization. Due to expensive domestic labor and a developed financial system, the U.S. has gradually leveraged its technological and capital advantages to relocate manufacturing plants to Asia, Europe, and South America. A strong and complete manufacturing industry system is virtually non-existent in the U.S. Since the top 10 conglomerates can reap the world's wealth through dollar hegemony and military deterrence, why bother expending the capital and energy to maintain a vast industrial system? America wants to embrace the MAGA movement, even embracing the slogan "If we want to be great again, we must use American products and make American goods." However, both the reindustrialization of America under Trump and the rebuilding of American infrastructure under Biden have failed. Therefore, America hopes to usher in the great age of AI. Since the old men are unwilling to build factories and there are no workers to employ them, why not build entirely automated factories and let machines do the work, thus keeping productivity within the United States? Even before Thanos snapped his fingers, the consensus among American elites was that they should vigorously develop the AI industry. With a population reduced by half, the American manufacturing industry is becoming even more unsustainable. Labor costs are rising, and young people are less stressed out, making them even less willing to work in factories. Consequently, the United States has begun accelerating the development of mass automated production, with Stark Industries being a leading example. A genius who developed mature artificial intelligence in the 1990s, Tony Stark not only married and had a daughter in those 5 years, but he and his wife, along with his parents, also leveraged national strategic momentum to propel Stark Industries to new heights. This is the confidence that allowed Tony Stark Industries to push forward with the Doomsday Fortress project, solely on Stark Industries. It's also because America's automated factories have advanced significantly over the past 5 years that Nick Fury, known as Black Boiled Egg, is confident he can quietly build a Noah's Ark to travel to another universe. Inside an automated factory outside San Francisco, Nick Fury stood before a large screen. He paid no attention to the whirring machinery within, but instead observed the footage from the surveillance satellite. The image showed an celestial palace perched high in the clouds, floating above China, flanked by several celestial mountains, with cranes spreading their wings and dragons and phoenixes soaring. As the saying goes, when granaries are full, people learn etiquette, and the saying, when you're full, you have nothing to do, both illustrate a common truth. After satisfying the basic needs of life, people begin to pursue spiritual needs. Despite zombies ravaging foreign lands, some eccentric individuals or those with ulterior motives within the protection of the immortal formations kept popping up to stir up trouble, claiming the news was fake, that the authorities were colluding with aliens to trap everyone, and so on. Zhao Yi, after consulting Lin Hao, singled out the loudest offenders and tossed their entire families off to free foreign lands. He then live-streamed the scene of these idiots being devoured by zombies, uncensored. It was a relief. Finally, the nation's psychological problems were being addressed. Lin Hao resorted to hauling a heavenly palace from Mars and sending Jiang Ming with a new Shushan to accompany them. Capitalizing on the nationwide state of emergency, he launched a national pilgrimage to immortality. With something to do, the unrest subsided. Seeing his old rival prosper while his beloved America was overrun by zombies, the black-brained, shitty white man felt deeply uneasy. After conspiring with the financial backers of Project Ark, he'd been interrogating Phil Coulson about SHIE. SHI, having previously dealt directly with SHIE's North American branch, Coulson, from the base universe, was well versed in SHIE's basic information. However, his knowledge was based on an outdated version from before Lin Hao joined. He'd gained a fresh understanding of the new information through his own experiences in America over the years. Do you think Strange's magic circle can block SHIE's prying eyes? Nick Fury glared at Coulson. The Hawaii riots that had occurred in another universe had been publicly disclosed to the nation by the real captain, who had publicly tried the Hawaiian elite, making the riots known to the entire nation. While Phil Coulson didn't know the full story, he was a professional agent, and with a quick analysis, he understood that someone had deliberately leaked the elite's plot to the lower ranks, leading to the complete collapse of the lower-level military and police forces and the self-destructive riots. Every failure teaches wisdom. Nick Fury's Ark project similarly saw the upper echelons abandon the common people. They didn't care if the lower classes revolted. After all, Earth was already ruined, so how much more damage could be done? They simply didn't want to jeopardize the project before it was completed. Fortunately, Stephen Strange, along with the entire Kamartaj magician, approached them, offering to join them and provide magic circles for their automated factories, both to ensure their safety and to conceal their tracks. However, seeing the dramatic actions being carried out across the ocean, Nick Fury's doubts returned. No matter how he looked at it, the special effects were far more impressive than the flimsy magic circles at Kamartaj, making it hard for the naturally insecure Black Bitten Egg to remain skeptical. Seeing some people questioning how Stark Industries could independently build the Doomsday Fortress, I've provided a few more explanations, contextualizing the cause and effect. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 439 Tony Stark, you guess it right again, it's me. Faced with his old boss's question, Phil Coulson could only smile awkwardly. I'm not sure. Perhaps Carol can answer you. I have a feeling she's keeping some crucial information secret, information about SHIER, I know what she's hiding. It's simply the specific strength of that Chinese man. She's afraid that revealing it will make us lose our resolve to resist. Nick Fury, worthy of being the king of agents, hit the nail on the head. Although Carol remained tight-lipped, he couldn't help but feel nervous whenever anyone mentioned SHIER and Lin Hao. As her old friend, Nick Fury had long suspected something was going on between them. Furthermore, Lin Hao hadn't hidden himself from the people of the main movie universe. His 2 consecutive flashouts had already made his existence known to the entire world, and indeed the entire universe. He could wield all 6 Infinity Stones effortlessly, snapping his fingers repeatedly without suffering any harm, something not even Thanos could achieve. Nick Fury had remembered this Asian man since the first time Lin Hao brought him back, and he never dared to forget him. He considered this man and the SHIEA, a group from another universe, his lifelong enemies. However, the more he valued him, the more cautious he became. Until he had a thorough understanding of this man, Nick Fury would remain hidden, unnoticed, like a venomous snake. Looks like we need to be prepared for our plan to be exposed. Nick Fury's Noah's Ark project was progressing apace, while Tony Stark and Steve Rogers' Fortress of Doom project was also making promising progress. With the help of intelligent construction machines, the walls of several pre-selected fortresses of Doom had been completed, and the city's water network was being renovated. Rocket Raccoon, Star-Lord, and others, forced to remain on Earth, also joined the construction effort, adding energy shields to each fortress. The refugees who successfully reached the settlement regained hope in life. Despite the hardships they had endured along the way, they had finally survived. Having successfully settled in Atlanta, Peter Parker and his crew found life in the settlement to be not too difficult. While daily labor was a necessity, who wouldn't have wanted to? After experiencing hardship and grief, the refugees lowered their expectations of life and became more content. When they received their wages at the end of each day's workday, their happiness actually increased slightly. Hey, Peter, if you keep working so hard, we'll be out of a job. On the construction site, Peter Parker, unabashedly unaware of his identity, used his superpowers to effortlessly carry a ton of parts and materials, more efficiently than an automated robot. This naturally drew good-natured teasing from his fellow workers. Yet, you're obviously underage, so you don't have to do heavy labor. I have Aunt May to support, and besides, I'm a man. Peter held up the building materials in one hand, flexing his muscles with his free hand to show off his strength to his fellow workers. He loved the atmosphere on the construction site. The workers knew his identity, and there was no curiosity or fanaticism, let alone revenge against his family for knowing his identity. This atmosphere of freedom to express oneself freely delighted Peter. The apocalypse wasn't all bad for Peter. At least the once annoying criminals were gone, and even if they still existed, he now had to rely on his own labor to earn a living. The robbers and drug addicts once commonplace are now a rare sight within the fortresses. Only after the passionate years are over, when the hierarchy within the fortresses solidifies, will the breeding ground for crime reappear. Young Peter didn't dwell on this, he simply enjoyed the relaxed atmosphere. Then, a light screen projection appeared above the construction site. It was the same old recipe, the same old sauce. It appeared in every city that served as a doomsday fortress, in every block, ensuring everyone could see it. Friday, the artificial intelligence that effectively managed these fortresses, immediately noticed the problem and reported it to Tony Stark. Sir, something's wrong. The familiar recipe and the familiar taste brought a sharp change of expression to the faces of Tony and Pepper, who had already been transferred to the helicarrier. Here we go again, Pepper Potts from the base universe screamed. Here we go again. Jarvis suddenly received a communication request that bypassed its firewall and popped up automatically. Haha, Tony Stark, you guess it right again, it's me. The video showed Ivan Vanko's smug face. Don't blame me, It's just you Americans who are too stubborn. You keep making the same mistake twice, forgetting it. To you, it's not a mistake, it's the natural order of things. Jarvis, disconnect the internet. Tony from the base universe turned pale. Without the internet, they wouldn't have to endure Ivan Vanko's provocations, but would have to face another crisis. Projection screens appeared in various settlements, showcasing several fully automated factories, countless machines busily constructing massive steel arcs. Ivan Vanko's voice echoed throughout the settlements. Americans, are you curious about what's in that image? He offered the answer without delay. This is Noah's Ark, a means of escape built by your American elite for their families. Yes, everyone's heard the story of God's punishment with the flood and Noah's building of the Ark. The behemoth you see now is a New Age Ark built by the wealthy. I'm sure you're curious. Where are they fleeing to? There are zombies abroad too. Are they fleeing to outer space? No, they've found a better destination. A small window popped up on the screen, showing Nick Fury liaising with the bosses of the consortium. This is the former director of SHIELD. You may be unfamiliar with the others, as they rarely appear in public, but you've definitely heard of them. They are the current patriarchs of the Morgan, Rockefeller, DuPont, and other families. Listening to the narration and watching the conversation on screen, the survivors in the settlement finally understood what the powerful men were planning. This universe's solar system is sealed off. Even if all the nuclear bombs humanity has ever produced were unleashed, they wouldn't be able to break the barrier at the edge of the solar system. Nick Fury was trying to convince the consortium bosses. Fortunately, we have a new technology that allows us to travel to another parallel universe. Gentlemen, I think you understand what this means. This means we will have one, not countless, brand new Earths. Black Egg, a true agent with a deep understanding of human nature, immediately grasped the consortium boss's sweet spot. Abandoning the sealed-off, zombie-infested Earth in exchange for countless brand new Earths, vast resources, countless populations, and limitless wealth await them in the future. Why hesitate? Almost all the consortium leaders didn't even wait for Nick Fury to finish his words, demanding proof. After seeing the evidence, they immediately agreed, fearing that a delay in agreeing would mean missing out on this incredible opportunity. This led to an unprecedented surge in Nick Fury's power. As long as he could maintain control of the PIM particles and the time machine, the consortium would even depend on him for the future. The previous chapter went into the house and did not come out. Chapter 440. Peter, I'm so sorry for letting you see the badness of adults. As soon as Ivan Vanko made his move, Tony Stark from the main film universe immediately contacted Nick Fury, the male protagonist of this scandal. However, the call was unresolved. Even the artificial intelligence was, for the first time, unable to figure it out. Sir, we can't find Mr. Fury's IP address. They suspect they've implemented physical isolation measures. Fuck, Tony exclaimed. You're so smart. And SHIE found you. Thinking Nick Fury was oblivious to the situation, he suddenly requested a communication. Just as Black Egg was considering the possibility of SHIE spying and pondering countermeasures, Ivan Vanko exposed him. It turned out their actions had been under SHIE surveillance, a fact that made Nick Fury deeply wary. As the one-eyed figure of Black Boiled Egg appeared on the screen, Tony couldn't contain his rage. Steve and I worked so hard to build the fortress so that as many of our compatriots could survive, and you're deserting us again. Where is Scott? The equipment he's carrying is mine. Nick Fury paused for a moment, then spoke without hesitation. Tony, stop talking nonsense. You should understand that this Earth has lost hope. What do you mean by hope? As long as people survive, there's hope. Tony roared into the screen. The solar system is big enough for Earthlings to continue developing for hundreds of years. We'll definitely defeat the virus in the future. Those old guys haven't even been to space, and now they're concerned about whether we can get out of the solar system in the future. Seeing the other party's anger, Nick Fury had to give up the idea of asking them for the time travel machine technology. Fortunately, he always likes to have a backup plan, and he had Ant-Man Scott Lang secretly leave this piece of equipment. Recently, using this equipment, his scientists have developed a way to replicate it, but it's just a matter of making it bigger. While he couldn't shrink down to the size of a watch like the genius Tony Stark, he could easily build a large iron box. The iron arc was plenty large enough. After all, Scott was also an electronics engineer, having been involved in the entire process of developing the time machine, from theory to manufacturing. With the help of his father-in-law, Pim Henke, Replicating it wasn't difficult. Pimenko was the brilliant scientist who invented the PIM particles and independently built a device capable of communicating with the quantum realm. Tony's time machine built upon this foundation, adding positioning, navigation, and propulsion capabilities. Tony, I know you're feeling overwhelmed right now, but it's okay. I'll leave you the coordinates before I leave, and you can always catch up if you want, Nick Fury said, his manner akin to an elder, his warmth and kindness radiating from his younger self. Also, before you leave, I'll give you a big gift to save you some trouble. Shut up. Tony suddenly called out another name. Strange, you're over there, right? Why? Why are you helping them? Strange, who had been away from the camera, took a few steps forward and walked into the camera with a stern face. Mr. Stark, you don't seem to have the right to question my choice. I thought we were teammates. Tony was hurt. After all, they had experienced a life and death battle together 5 years ago. Even parents can't interfere in their children's lives, let alone teammates. Strange remained indifferent, as if deliberately trying to hide a hint of apology in his heart. Kamatage's mission is to defend Earth from the invasion of dimensional demons. However, the Eternals have sealed off the solar system, making it impossible for any dimensional demon to invade Earth. Kamatage's mission is over. That's a nice thing to say, another Tony, standing nearby with his arms folded, sneered. I think it's because you magicians can't contact those demons, can't use their magic, and your power is fading. Yes, that's one of the reasons. Strange was surprisingly frank. The magicians of Kamataje have undergone years of training. Magic is a part of our lives. You can pursue your old lives, so why can't we? Mr. Stark, your call is also being broadcast live. X2 Jarvis and Friday reminded their respective masters simultaneously. Tony from the base universe immediately shut up, his face sullen. Tony from the main movie universe, however, hadn't grown accustomed to these hardships and remained indignant. It's SHIE. Ivan Vanko is with SHIE. Why are you always targeting America? It was both an open question and a challenge. Don't waste your energy. You must have encountered network lag. The other Tony, adopting the air of a seasoned veteran, rolled his eyes and said, they're skilled workers. They've gone through these processes many times. The past was too painful to recall, but this was how he'd managed to get through all these years. Since he couldn't resist, he had to learn to get used to it. As long as he was alive, there was always a glimmer of hope for the future. Why? The Tony from the main movie universe, clearly unused to the constant attacks, shouted in frustration, why is SHIE targeting America? Have you done anything to them? It seems our Nick Fury killed a bunch of them. You've seen them. They must be the ones who were resurrected in the clouds. The Tony from the base universe shared the intelligence he'd gathered. Just because of those agents? They've already destroyed America. The Tony from the main movie universe screamed in disbelief. Now they're going to destroy another one, maybe more than just these two, the other Tony said, looking at the window on the screen where the call ended with a hint of sarcasm. The naive guy hadn't seen the terror of SHIE and that man. Ivan Vanko's revelations disrupted order within the Fortress of Doom. Peter Parker, still at the construction site, stared blankly at the screen in the sky. Even though Stephen Strange had left, he couldn't understand. Why? Why would he do this? Peter, I'm so sorry. An older worker approached, a rough hand patting Peter's shoulder, his weathered face thick with emotion. I've shown you how awful adults can be. Haha, you're truly terrifyingly naive. A droning voice boomed overhead as three little ones, riding broomsticks, hovered over Peter. Little Peter scoffed, unconcealed, have you never seen the ugly deeds of these powerful men? You're truly blessed, you, said the older Peter, looking up at the younger Peter, who was clearly several years younger than him, with a mixture of shock and a strange sense of sadness. What had his alternate universe self experienced to say such a thing? A friendly reminder, go back and protect Aunt May, your peaceful life is coming to an end. Chapter 441 Let him act. Unsurprisingly, many of America's doomsday fortresses were plunged into chaos following Ivan Vanko's revelations. Refugees, having enjoyed a few days of peace, took to the streets, demonstrating against the desertion of the upper echelons, venting their anger at being abandoned. Beating, smashing, looting, and burning, these four major methods were employed, as Americans freely expressed their opinions. Why should the bigwigs leave while we remain trapped in a zombie-infested world? Why can't we leave together? Stark Industries, relying on artificial intelligence and armor, maintained order in the city, But this new model, clearly uncharacteristic of American tradition, resonated with many. They preferred the old model of government disengagement from the grassroots. Even without jobs or social benefits, as long as the government's lackeys left us alone, it was a manifestation of American freedom. However, they had just escaped the zombies, and once inside the fortress, Stark Industries, relying on the armor's force, seized all supplies, preventing them from obtaining other means of sustenance. Even America's beloved $0 shopping has been swept away by the superhero Tony Stark. Artificial intelligence and armor undoubtedly offer crime-fighting efficiency far surpassing that of ordinary police officers. Desperate, those free Americans are forced to endure hard labor to earn necessities. Now that they've found a pretext, these restless free Americans have erupted. Driven by the unequal distribution of wealth, many angry, honest citizens have joined in the violence. Stop, stop, Peter Parker, alerted by his alter ego, quickly heads to Aunt May's workplace. After delivering her to the resettlement site for Michelle Jones's family, he can't help but feel chivalrous and takes to the streets to try to stop the unrest. Wasn't everyone's life good before? We all had jobs, incomes, and children didn't have to pay tuition to go to school. Although the hours were a bit longer, Mr. Stark had strict work and rest schedules. Honestly, the management rules established by Steve and Tony, who had visited the base universe and were influenced by the real captain, were definitely much better for honest workers than their previous days working for capitalists. After all, the old order had been destroyed, the population had plummeted, and the contradiction between population and resources had been greatly alleviated. Even if Stark Industries continued to exploit some surplus value, the pressure on workers would be much less than before. Steve and Tony needed to restore production order as quickly as possible to accommodate more people in the Fortress of Doom. This was a lesson they learned from their experience in the base universe. Thus, the goodwill of superheroes trumped the pursuit of profit by the capitalist elite. But restless people won't be content, they don't want to toil every day. Isn't $0 shopping all that appealing? As for the fact that after the order was destroyed, everyone would go hungry. Those who advocate extreme freedom wouldn't care about that. Egoists simply aim to be the best of the best. Fuck you. Get out of here. Someone hurled a homemade Molotov cocktail at Peter, shouting, "You're Tony Stark's lackey. Don't even think about sending me back to hard labor. The big guys have abandoned us. The world is going to end." The rioters nearby cried in agony. What's the point of working now? No, at least Mr. Stark hasn't abandoned us, and neither has Captain America, Peter protested. He had truly been happy for the past month or so inside the fortress. No crime, no need to hide, free to meet people with dignity. His fellow workers looked at him with neither curiosity nor fear, only kind anticipation. But overnight, no, before nightfall, everything vanished. Peter still didn't quite understand why it had happened, he simply refused to accept it. However, just as he had been forced to abandon so many refugees before, he was now unable to stop the riot. Steve and Tony were also unable to stop it, as a struggle ensued between them. If you give the order now, Friday can suppress the riot in record time, Tony declared coldly. Both Tonys in the two universes were determined to suppress it violently. But Steve hesitated. Many people here are simply venting their anger at being abandoned. In a few hours, they'll go back. As for those still roaming the streets, I agree that you should suppress them. You know, the public's trust is the only guarantee of our long-term survival, especially now, after the betrayal of the top brass. We absolutely cannot let the people lose the gratitude we've worked so hard to cultivate. If we act, the public's goodwill towards us will be completely gone, and we'll become indifferent rulers. Tony was silent. Steve's concerns were justified. After all, this was their first time integrating and managing such a large population. The transition from superhero to ruler wasn't easy. But just as they were wavering, Nick Fury contacted them again. "Tony, we're leaving." The black sauce egg on the screen simply said this. The scene then shifted to a massive steel arc, where countless automated machines were moving and delivering supplies. It looked like all production equipment and processed raw materials, as if they were planning to open up new land. As for the powerful figures and their accumulated wealth, they had naturally been transported aboard the ark long ago and would not be displayed. Since Nick Fury already knew SHIE was watching them, how could he be so foolish as to offer a third on them? He'd contacted Tony Stark before leaving so that SHIE could stage another live broadcast. "Director, is Nick Fury doing this on purpose?" Ivan Vanko asked Lin Hao beside him. Stephen Strange's magical wards were no problem for him. He'd already spotted Nick Fury the moment he began to link up. No problem, let him act. Lin Hao had already guessed what this black brine egg was going to do, so he simply played along. Haha, he'll have to face reality soon. The live broadcast reappeared over America's Fortress of Doom, and Nick Fury breathed a sigh of relief upon receiving the feedback. If SHIE refused to take the bait, his next move would be to fart in his pants. When Tony saw the equipment and raw materials being transported in the picture, he immediately realized, "Are you going to an ancient Earth?" "Yes," Nick Fury actually said frankly, "in order to reduce the impact on another universe, we plan to go to an Earth in the barbaric period, when humans have not yet appeared. I took the time to organize the outline. Next, I will connect the universe during World War II, starting from the node when the mutants were restarted. Captain America is Peggy Carter, Captain Marvel is Maria Rambeau, and the Inhumans universe, which is the universe that Wanda visited in Doctor Strange 2. It will be written in detail here, or the movie plotline is the main focus, it will be more acceptable." Chapter 442 Fury, it's been a long time since we last met. Faced with Nick Fury's dignified honesty, Tony Stark sneered, "That way you can monopolize the entire Earth's resources. There will be no other countries, no other peoples, since there are countless parallel universes, wouldn't it be better to create a clean America?" Nick Fury revealed a hint of religious fervor. "There will be no more national and ethnic conflicts. The world will enjoy unprecedented peace. Earth civilization will rapidly reach the stars under the American banner and become a beacon for the entire universe." Although Black Salted Egg had many selfish motives and flaws, he always believed in the great American spirit. He successfully led the destination selection negotiations, suppressing all opinions and setting the destination as Earth in another era of barbarism. As the saying goes, a blank canvas is easy to paint on. Without other countries to hinder him, Nick Fury firmly believed that these American elites would build an unprecedentedly prosperous and advanced global nation and then reach the stars. Many refugees in the fortress, watching Nick Fury's words on the live broadcast, were unsurprisingly sour. "Assholes, why didn't you take me with you? Fuck you, I'm an elite too." Protest. I protest. I can't stay in this damn cage anymore. A roar of clamor threatened to drown out every Fortress of Doom, but the rioting was much less intense because everyone was looking up at the live stream. Those with dark minds cursed the powerful who had abandoned them. They couldn't get what they wanted, so they couldn't bear to see others get it. They're bound to fail, that's right, the 2 astronauts in space haven't even returned. And they're still thinking of going to a parallel universe. I curse them, they're going to explode like Apollo 13, you want to explode after reaching space? I think it's going to explode right after takeoff. Nick Fury seemed to have anticipated the public's outrage. He gave Tony a final, meaningful smile and headed for the gangway. Arriving inside the Iron Ark, Phil Coulson, Carol Danvers, Talos, and the Skrull refugees were already aboard. Coulson and Carol, hailing from the base universe, already felt little sense of belonging to the film's main universe. After Lin Hao's shattering of Carol's spiritual heart, she became even more reluctant to remain in this desolate place. Most importantly, the blockade surrounding the solar system was personally imposed by the great God Eternal. Carol couldn't break through it, unable to travel to outer space or become a cosmic policeman. What joy would there be in her life? A new environment would be a better option. As for the Talos and Skrull refugees from the film's main universe, they were even more reluctant to remain within the blockaded solar system. Earth was overrun with zombies, so even if they found a habitat, what good would it do? If they could start over in another universe, journeying back to a barbaric era millions of years ago, when neither the Kree nor the Skrull civilizations had yet developed, refugees like them could become pioneers of civilization. That's the allure of time travel. Go. Notify the other arcs for a final confirmation of the destination coordinates, Nick Fury ordered. After confirmation, the program officially began, and the final countdown began. Are the bombs planted? Nick Fury asked. Don't worry, I took care of it myself, Coulson replied. Okay, I hope this will ease Tony's stress. On the livestream, massive steel arcs slowly rose. They didn't need to fly into space, or even take off. Their destination was the wilds of time, where would there be any flat land for them to dock? Therefore, these arcs were powered to ensure the nobles could avoid the rough ride while the automated robots constructed the landing pad. The countdown on the screen reached 0, and the massive steel arcs shrank to particles, burrowing into a device connected to the quantum realm, vanishing. However, this was an arc encased within, its outer shell still hovering above America. 3 seconds later, it exploded with a bang, erupting in a massive ball of fire. The swirling voices of the people in the various fortresses were instantly silenced. Oh my god, the curse has come true. Oh my god, is my mouth so sharp? Ha 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 ha, it exploded, it really exploded. I told them they wouldn't end well. Even God wouldn't tolerate this. Inevitably, some in the fortresses laughed heartily, while others shouted, as refreshing as a sip of iced Coke on a hot day. Tony and Steve in the helicarrier were stunned for a moment before realizing what was happening. This was Nick Fury's gift, a self-destruction to appease the public so they could continue with the Doomsday Fortress project. When Tony figured it out, he could use the coordinates sent ahead of time to reach their destination, even without the time difference. It's a disguise. Steve's face darkened. How clever of you. Do you think SHIE can't see through it? Tony from the main movie universe sneered. Those of them who had used the time machine understood the principle best. PIM particles could shrink and magnify any object. A small arc inside a large arc wouldn't be a piece of cake. No, that arrogant Nick Fury has never seen the terror of SHIE and thinks he won't have to deal with them, so he doesn't care if he's seen through, Tony from the base universe sarcastically said. Just wait, the show's about to begin. Several iron arcs shuttled through the fantastical and magnificent quantum realm. However, the ship Nick Fury was on soon discovered that the others had veered off course. Boss, this is bad, Coulson reported loudly. The other arcs have all shut down. Hearing this, Nick Fury sneered. Unsurprisingly, I figured it out. Once they figured out the procedures, they definitely changed their destination. Sharing the Earth is a daunting task for everyone, right? The consortiums the Black Egg had colluded with included not only American consortiums but also established European consortiums. Even the sons of Japan and South Korea, upon hearing the news, smugly approached. However, the sons lacked control and were unworthy of their own arcs. Even if they demanded to build their own, with their father controlling the time machine, there was nothing the sons could do. Once in the new universe, sons could only be sons. Nick Fury had witnessed the nature of consortiums countless times before. Forget it. The talent on this arc is enough to sustain Earth. This Black Egg clearly had his own ambitions. Continuing to work for white people wouldn't give him the same sense of accomplishment as building a truly equal Black America, so, he'd already made 2 plans. The sun returned, and they arrived in another universe. We're here, then, they saw several other massive arcs nearby. These arcs, clearly destined for different destinations, had strangely arrived at the same destination, and this destination wasn't the desolate Earth they longed for. Below them lay skyscrapers and a constant stream of people. Wow, wow, Nick Fury jumped up in surprise, scurried to the window, and stared at the familiar Empire State Building below, transfixed. Why? Is there something wrong with Tony's technology? Tony Stark was muttering to himself when a transparent portal suddenly appeared outside the Empire State Building below, and a familiar helicarrier flew in. Fury, it's been ages. Chapter 443, American Refugees Spark World War II in America. Nick Fury's envisioned reunion with Tony Stark played out similarly. Tony, finally figuring things out, used the coordinates he'd given him to reach another universe, dedicating his ingenuity to the new America. Clearly, the scene before him wasn't Tony Stark's comprehension. Why is there a portal here? Nick Fury turned to Phil Coulson, grabbed him by the collar, and angrily shouted, has SWIE mastered space-time technology? Why didn't you tell me such crucial information? The portals scattered throughout the American cities of the main film universe had naturally caught Fury's attention. He even found a remote city and secretly crossed through them to reach his base universe. Upon discovering that the America beyond was blocked, he abandoned the idea of transferring there entirely. But no one had told him that these portals were man-made. After all, Lin Hao had created the portals first. After the Avengers engaged in a chaotic battle with Shenran and Thanos' army, he snapped his fingers and brought back half of the lives. We're not sure these portals were created by SHIE, we thought they were natural. Coulson fell silent, exhausted. Why could SHIE come up with so many tricks? Why did SHIE master this technology that could connect parallel universes at will? They were all excellent agents who didn't believe in coincidences. There was no reason why a natural portal would appear right after they arrived in a parallel universe. How could it be such a coincidence? Moreover, this universe wasn't their chosen destination at all. Several other arcs that were supposed to be heading to different destinations had strangely appeared here. Carol wouldn't believe it wasn't man-made. All this must be the work of the evil SHIE. The sudden appearance of several steel arcs in the sky shocked the Americans below, and the sudden appearance of a pale black portal outside the Empire State Building made them even more astonished and doubtful. What's going on? Aliens invading Earth. Herbert Wells's prophecy has come true? Star Wars is about to break out. Oh my god. I just escaped from Poland. Isn't America, far from war, safe either? At the outbreak of World War II, America had already embraced Roosevelt's New Deal and welcomed a large number of European scientists and wealthy individuals, embarking on the path to world dominance. The economy was booming, politics was clear, and it was arguably the most vibrant era since the founding of the nation. Therefore, in the face of emergencies, the New York police far surpassed their performance 80 years later. Patrol officers immediately rushed to the phone booth to notify the police station, and the police chief immediately dispatched all officers. 80 years later, arriving at a robbery scene 9 hours after the crime seemed like fantasy to these New York police officers. In comparison, the military was lackluster. At the outset of World War II, the United States had only 3 infantry divisions and 1 cavalry division, less than 100,000 troops. Yes, you read that correctly. Less than 100,000 troops in a landmass of over 9 million square kilometers. This statistic pales even in comparison to Wu Peifu, the warlord who occupied Jiangsu and Zhejiang over a decade earlier. The Americans resorted to such a bizarre strategy because they profited nothing from World War I. The conglomerates had invested in the army to fight in the First World War hoping for a huge profit, but not only did they not make a profit, they actually lost money. This deeply distressed the conglomerates, who immediately after the war, were eager to disband the army, unwilling to continue paying the bills. They even used tanks to drive out veterans demanding their wages. The conglomerates had already lost money, and the peasant soldiers still wanted wages? Is there any justice? Is there any law? Therefore, in the years after World War I, the United States maintained a small military. North America's advantageous geographical location provided ample time to react and build an army, even in the event of an enemy invasion. The 13 colonies during the Revolutionary War and the North's hasty response during the Civil War both began to build large armies after the outbreak of hostilities. The same strategy was followed in World Wars I and II. Only after World War II did America reap the benefits, establishing a new strategy of using military force to safeguard the dollar's hegemony. The military became a tool for the capitalists to make a killing, and naturally, it wasn't disbanded. Instead, military spending continued to increase year after year. No one would engage in a losing business, but how could capitalists not be eager to engage in profitable ventures? At this time, Germany had just annexed Poland, and Chamberlain hadn't even completely abandoned his peace path. America, far from the Eurasian continent, was eager to sell goods to both sides and profit from the war. Any fanatics clamoring for war would be shunned by the capitalists. So-called isolationism simply means you fight your war, and I make my money. With a military unreliable, the New York police naturally stepped up. Surround Fifth Avenue immediately, boss. The alien spaceship is too big. We can't win with just our revolvers. Even if we can't win, we have to charge forward. Don't forget our families are right behind us. No, I mean, can we go to the gun shop first and get some bigger weapons? The chief needs to talk to their boss first, or the clerk will open fire first. These resolute New York police officers were about to use their small arms to fight the floating alien spaceship in the sky, but they didn't expect that the first enemy they encountered was the American invaders rushing out of the portal. The refugees of the fortress in the main universe of the movie had just watched the live broadcast of the Iron Ark exploding and were gloating over the disaster. Then the scene changed and the previously exploded arcs reappeared in the sky. Their gloating laughter stopped abruptly, just like the curses that had stopped when the ark exploded, like a duck suddenly having its neck strangled, its face flushing red. Even the dumbest person realized they had been deceived again. The high-ranking officials had once again deceived the kind-hearted people. Desperate for venting their anger, they suddenly discovered a pale black portal 100 meters tall and 100 meters long. In case they didn't know the way, an arrow appeared on the live stream, pointing to the portal. Just tell me, isn't the great demon king considerate? At this moment, With the exception of a few rational individuals who could suppress their rage at being repeatedly deceived and abandoned, the vast majority of American refugees couldn't control their emotions. They were accustomed to free venting and hadn't been taught restraint. So they ran home, unearthed their treasured weapons, and rushed towards the portal. To maintain their troop advantage, Lin Hao avoided a nationwide attack this time, opening portals in only a few doomsday fortresses. After all, other American cities were sparsely populated. The connected cities were concentrated in the heavily industrialized areas along the Great Lakes and in the major cities of New York and Los Angeles, avoiding San Francisco, which had a large Chinese population. The enraged American refugees transformed into invaders, wielding advanced weapons that transcended their time, and stormed into America just after the outbreak of World War II. For a moment, the once peaceful America was engulfed in flames of war. Two groups of Americans from different eras fought fiercely. A grandfather killed his grandson, and a strong great-grandson shot down his young great-grandfather. Similar scenes kept happening. The war that neither Britain nor France had experienced on the European continent was the first to be tasted by America, the God-given land. In one word, sour. I'm still writing, so go to bed early and read it tomorrow morning. Chapter 444, The Dead Cripple's Only Good at Talking Big. When it comes to patriotism, we have to look to Father Hoover. Friday Report Fortress. Tony Stark piloted the helicarrier toward the nearest fortress. The portals Lin Hao had previously opened across the United States hadn't disappeared, and portals connecting to the base universe still stood in the city centers of other cities. The main universe of the film had lost its ability to defend these portals, leaving only a few within the Doomsday Fortress surrounded by Tony's Iron Legion, who even built a 100-meter-high wall to block them. Previous invading American forces had either been overrun by zombies or cut off by the Lone Star Republic on the other side. Captain Zhen's power had greatly increased since he obtained Rama's remains, and his temper had inevitably become impatient. He accelerated the northern expedition, completely disregarding his own efforts. In some states, the battle didn't even begin. The arrival of the Lone Star Republic's new troops caused the remaining troops to flee, forcing Steve, severely short-handed, to accelerate his red expansion as well. The combined influence of good and bad had obvious consequences. With the exception of Washington and Oregon, which were occupied by Native Americans, the Lone Star Republic has reclaimed the entire United States. Captain True and his team are now engaged in a fierce campaign to suppress the invading zombies and zombie beasts. To prevent further zombie invasions, Captain True has stationed heavy forces behind each portal and, imitating Tony's approach from another universe, has constructed high walls and fortifications to block the portals. While these structures can't stop powerful enemies, they can keep out ordinary zombies. During the construction of the Doomsday Fortress, the situation on both sides of the portal remained relatively stable, and Tony Stark simply instructed Friday to maintain a certain level of vigilance and then paid no attention. Suddenly, another portal appeared, and even kindly pointed the way for the refugees. Tony couldn't sit still. He rushed over, taunted Nick Fury, and then attempted to prevent the angry refugees from invading this time and space's America. Everyone, calm down. Even if you're angry, you shouldn't vent it on these innocent people. Countless drones and armored suits took off from the helicarrier, circling over the New York portal and heading towards several other cities, carrying Tony's voice. However, his feeble calls were met with only shouts and a barrage of bullets. Get out, these people simply wanted to vent their anger. Having experienced abandonment and betrayal twice in such a short period of time, coupled with an emotional backlash, their dignity and intelligence were being trampled underfoot. Who could withstand such an intimidation? The fire was set to burn today. Even Jesus wouldn't help. Save your energy. Even if you throw gold in front of them at this point, they'll just pick it up and continue causing trouble. Tony, from the base universe, had already experienced collapse and decadence, so his emotions were remarkably stable. Unlike the old Tony, who had initially been ravaged by the great demon, he still tried to make amends. How can you be so cold-blooded? The old Tony roared at his alter ego. Very good. I've recorded your words now. I hope you'll still be active in a year or so. The younger Tony sneered and turned away. This was just like his old self, foolishly flying over to Washington whenever something happened. But with him or without him, it made no difference. It couldn't change the outcome. The sudden appearance of drones and armor further intensified the panic of the New Yorkers below. Run. The aliens are attacking, the Earth is going to be destroyed, America is finished. As Tony's voice spread, the panicked New Yorkers abruptly stopped fleeing, looking up, their faces agape. How do aliens speak English? Aren't all aliens in novels and movies like that? Are there any that don't speak English? Yes. They speak in a gibberish and need a translator, have you noticed? These invaders look just like us, just discovered. Everyone who saw them before has been killed, boss. These invaders are incredibly powerful, a New York City police officer hiding behind a phone booth shouted to his captain. They're using automatic firepower. Their bullets like they were free. As he spoke, he fired 2 more shots, his revolver empty. Damn. We're seriously outgunned. Reloading takes too long. The NYPD's deputy commissioner, commanding the front lines, observed the situation and realized the situation was extremely unfavorable. While most of the invading American refugees had no military training, some were experienced in looting and vandalism. They were particularly active in the chaos, skilled at protecting themselves and taking advantage of the situation to launch surprise attacks. While the New York City police of 1939 fought bravely, their weapons were clearly no match for the fully automatic firepower of 80 years later. Furthermore, they were vastly outnumbered by the invading refugees, resulting in a situation where a random punch defeats the master and they were briefly overwhelmed. The NYPD would later become the best equipped and most capable local police department in the United States. However, in New York in 1939, the FBI, led by Hoover, was the dark cloud hanging over America. The corporate bosses sought to establish a powerful institution to better protect the free market economy and prevent the dictator Roosevelt from excessively interfering with economic freedom. They chose J. Edgar Hoover's Bureau of Investigation, BOI, originally a small detective agency established by the Attorney General, and provided them with both personnel and funds. In July 1935, the Bureau was officially renamed the FBI. The New Deal began in March 1933. Hoover initially performed well, endearing himself to the bosses and effectively checking Roosevelt's power. But later, the conglomerate bosses discovered that Hoover had gone a bit too far, secretly collecting dirt on them. This supposedly obedient, loyal dog had gradually morphed into vicious, devouring dog, leaving the conglomerate bosses feeling like they were eating shit. They desperately wanted to get rid of Hoover, but the dog held so much dirt, and they were hesitant to act decisively. Consequently, they were forced to keep him in office for 50 years, while Roosevelt, who had worked so hard to help America survive World War II, died of illness on the eve of victory. So don't expect gratitude from the conglomerate bosses, they only fear. It was only 1939, and Hoover had only just begun to harbor thoughts of devouring his master, and his relationship with the conglomerate bosses was relatively good. He was also the first to receive the news of aliens descending on New York. Standing at his office window, the man in a suit gazed north toward New York, as if hoping to see an alien spaceship. The domestic military was weak, and a sudden alien invasion would have been the end of America in a normal universe. Fortunately, this universe was not. While the military was ineffective, there were still people with superpowers to fill the gap. After just a moment's gaze, Hoover quickly returned to his desk, opened the bottom drawer, picked up a small microphone, and after some complicated transfers, he said, "Please contact Mr. Black Emperor for me. If he is in America, he should know what happened. Tell him that the reward this time will not be small. I can find the medal he wants for him." After hanging up the phone, Hoover glanced in the direction of the White House and sneered secretly, "Roosevelt, that dead cripple, can only talk big. How can he compare to me? When it comes to patriotism, we have to look at Father Hoover. It happens that next year is an election year, so get ready and run for election." In X-Men, First Class, the bald professor and the Iron King should have been born around 1930. The plot takes place in the 1960s. The villain Black Emperor is about 20 years older than them, so the Black Emperor in 1939 should be around 30 years old. Chapter 445. Let's go see aliens together. Outside New York City, there's a manor called Xavier Manor, home to a young master who, months ago, had caught a little girl stealing food in the kitchen and adopted her. "Raven, don't act like that. You're frightening the housekeeper and the servants." Charles Xavier, though only 10 years old, is already incredibly mature and precocious. Coupled with his exceptional intelligence, he's already formed his own values. The little girl, with her blue skin and densely covered spines, didn't calm down after hearing Charles' words. Instead, she took on his image, mimicking his deep, mature voice. "Raven, Don't act like that, Charles, you're only 10, and you already look like an old man. The younger Raven, still childlike and playful, slumped down on the sofa, unruly. Charles, poring over a large book, shook his head helplessly and continued to flip through the pages. Just then, the elderly housekeeper hurried into the room. Master, this is bad. Aliens are invading New York, and the fighting has already begun. Walter, a hint of surprise finally crossed Charles's mature face. The news the butler had shared was clearly beyond his comprehension. Even a German mustache attack on North America would have been more plausible than an alien invasion. Aliens? Isn't that the stuff of science fiction? The young, bald professor hadn't yet begun his legendary life, and had never encountered such bizarre creatures. Raven, on the other hand, suddenly jumped up from the sofa upon hearing this, her excitement surging. Aliens? Are there really aliens? What do they look like? I want to see. She must have alien skin in her transformation wardrobe. With that, she rushed towards the door, completely ignoring Charles's opinion. Raven, Charles quickly put down his book and gave chase. Honestly, he, too, was curious about what aliens looked like. Master. You can't. The old butler had just rushed out the door when he saw the car in the garage already started and heading towards the manor gate. He helplessly shouted, "Be careful." A middle-aged man was behind the wheel, while Charles sat in the passenger seat. Curious, he asked, "You've actually learned to drive?" The man behind the wheel was Raven. She had first appeared in Charles' kitchen as an elderly woman. Among mutants her age, Raven's abilities were actually more effective and powerful. She could transform into an adult, thus gaining the physique of an adult, making her naturally stronger than most children whose abilities were undeveloped. This was how Raven, left alone, survived, and she also saved money on clothes. "Do you have to learn to drive?" Raven asked curiously, her voice gruff. Charles was stunned at first, assuming Raven was a genius who could learn by sight, but only realized it when the car began to sway from side to side as it left the house. "Shit, you can't drive." Young Charles fumbled to fasten his seatbelt. "Hold the wheel steady, don't shake it. Gently on the accelerator, gently." "Shit, you're in the wrong gear." Charles suddenly relished the pain of teaching the female driver a lesson, his precocious, polite persona shattered. Raven could alter the body's atomic and molecular structure, accurately replicating retinal patterns, vocal cords, fingers, palms, and skin pore patterns. But she couldn't replicate memories like a Skrull, let alone the super Skrulls who could replicate superpowers. Fortunately, the road from Xavier Manor to the city was sparsely populated, and even less traffic, so the female driver managed to get the car underway. They drove south from northern Manhattan, taking some time to reach the outskirts of the city. It was a chaotic scene, the roads jammed with cars rushing to leave the city. "Stop by the road, we'll walk over," Charles said, his gaze fixed on several massive ships in the distant sky, larger than any warships he had ever seen. Bang! With a resounding bang, Raven successfully stopped the car. Charles's eyes twitched as he gazed at the deformed hood, the smoking engine, and the swaying tree trunk. Raven thought for a moment before finding an excuse. "There's something wrong with the car's brakes." Charles wanted to scold him, but then he realized that stopping the car safely was a good thing. "Get out of the car, and I'll call the butler later." Such was the magnanimity of a young master. The burly man, leading the mature youngster, rode against a flow of people into the city, where they were soon met with a flurry of gunfire and shouting. Facing the outnumbered American invaders, the NYPD fought tenaciously, but were ultimately outnumbered and gradually retreated. Meanwhile, the activists mingled with the invaders began to employ their traditional skills, raiding street shops and looting. While everyday groceries naturally didn't attract them, gold and jewelry shops were particularly hard hit, with banks on Wall Street being particularly targeted. The American invaders had gradually discovered the timing of this universe, and their ideas began to take shape. "What's the point of looting? We should stay here." "That's right, there are no zombies here. With our ingenuity and knowledge 80 years ahead of us, making a fortune shouldn't be easy. Stop looting. Go take over territory first." "No, we should go back and get more weapons and ammunition. That's what we need to stay afloat." "What if the portal closes?" "It probably won't. The other portal has been open for months." The refugees began to split up. Some continued to vent their anger, while others began to plan for the future. Some refugees returned to stockpile weapons and ammunition, while others eagerly engaged the local gangs. The situation became increasingly chaotic. Tony Stark, aboard the helicarrier, noticed this after being alerted by Friday. He immediately ordered drones and armored vehicles to block the portal, attempting to cut off the flow of people and supplies. However, Friday sounded the alarm. "Sir, an unknown heat source has appeared inside the helicarrier." "Intruder!" A sharp sound pierced the air from behind. A red tail with a hard, arrow-like object at the end pierced Tony's back. Bang! The Red Devil's tail hit the nano-armor. The next second, 3 metal pieces emerged from Tony's shoulders, forming an energy launcher, which fired a blue shockwave directly at the Red Devil. The young Red Devil's eyes showed astonishment, and his conditioned reflex was to use his teleportation ability. With a loud boom, the shockwave fired by the armor missed and hit the wall of the helical carrier, creating a huge crater. Tony, the skinny Steve Rogers, heard the noise and ran over. "Don't come over, there are enemies." Tony was worried about Steve. In his current state, he was just a decoration. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 446, Another Tony Stark Feeling Powerless. Interesting. You're not aliens. Young Sebastian Shaw, standing before a computer on the aerospace carrier, couldn't hide his surprise and curiosity. "You're from the future." Nicknamed Black Emperor, Sebastian was no reckless man. He was a genius, having graduated from the prestigious Stevens Institute of Technology on a full scholarship. Known for his understanding of cutting-edge technology, Sebastian was thrilled to see these gadgets, nearly a century ahead of their time, like a rat in a rice jar. Even without Hoover's reward, this spaceship was a huge bonus, far more than Hoover had promised him. "Thank you for the gift. I'm very satisfied with it." Sebastian, clearly a bit arrogant, didn't consider the armored man and the sickly little man before him a threat. Friday, get Steve a suit and activate the internal shield. Tony Stark had made numerous modifications to the old helicarrier during the days it served as the Avengers' mobile headquarters. Following the Hulk's rampage inside the ship, Tony had installed an internal defense system to prevent enemy intrusion and sabotage. A flash of blue light illuminated the interior of the helicarrier, a faint shield covering the floor, walls, and even various equipment and instruments, leaving a separate combat area. Simultaneously, a cloud of silvery white nanostructures, like a flowing liquid, quickly enveloped Steve Rogers. The stars and stripes pattern, the round shield in his right hand, and his shorter stature and lack of his American hips, he looked just like Captain America. Rogers didn't act pretentiously, he knew how weak he was now. Without a suit, he couldn't even protect himself. "Cool." Sebastian's eyes lit up like a child seeing Transformers for the first time. "Everything on this ship is absolutely captivating." With his battle preparations complete, Tony didn't hesitate, raising his palm's energy cannon and firing a laser beam at Sebastian. Tony had a combo in mind, intending to block his opponent's escape route while he dodged, but the enemy stood still and took the blast. Even more astonishing, the laser hit its target with a drop of water, completely absorbed by the white light that illuminated Sebastian's body. "Is this a laser cannon?" Sebastian marveled. "Future technology indeed. The power is astonishing. Be careful, he can absorb attacks." Steve, having used a vibranium shield for many years, was familiar with this ability. Leveraging the power of his suit, he charged forward with his usual moves. He punched Sebastian in the chest. He'd intended to punch him in the face, but realized he had to jump first, so he could only reach the chest. The moment he made contact with the chest, a surge of force recoiled, sending him flying. Because the protective shield had just been erected, the room was full of obstacles. Steve first hit the workbench and was bounced away, then hit the ceiling and was bounced away again, finally landing on the wall, where he finally slid down after dissipating his kinetic energy. "Mr. Rogers, were you just imitating billiards?" Tony complained, then changed his attack mode. He fired 4 energy plates, surrounding Sebastian, connecting them with blue energy beams to form a triangular blockade, trapping the enemy. "Be careful, his power is like vibranium, it can absorb and release." Steve stood up again, protected by the suit. "So, if you don't attack him, he won't be sucked in." Before he could finish his words, Tony saw the trapped Sebastian place his hand on the transparent energy barrier. A white light flashed, and the energy began to absorb again. A moment later, the 4 metal plates fell to the ground like a dead light. "Anything else to eat?" Sebastian asked Tony, his face ecstatic. "I've never tasted such pure energy before." "It's delicious." "This is trouble," Tony frowned, sensing a formidable situation. The helicarrier was awash in energy. To power this massive structure and its various equipment, Tony had installed multiple arc reactors, ensuring it was an unstoppable vessel. Now, all of it would become enemy fodder. "I'll engage him in close combat, and you'll find a way to force our way out." Steve prepared to charge. "No way," Tony stopped him. "He'll drain all your energy, and the other enemy will teleport." Dark Emperor could absorb any form of energy and transform it for his own use. This ability was a natural counter to Iron Man armor, even more effective than Magneto's. While the armor could use anti-magnetic materials, it couldn't live without energy. Sebastian hadn't anticipated the small ship he'd chosen would be so vulnerable. He'd let the Red Devil lead him aboard simply because the helicarrier was the smallest of all the alien ships. Without much understanding, he could only rely on simple judgment. After all, 4 men, bigger equals stronger. Pick on the weakest persimmons. In fact, the other massive ships were even weaker. To meet deadlines, they lacked protective shields and were instead equipped with conventional weaponry. Even if one didn't choose the arc containing Nick Fury, the others wouldn't even have superpowers inside. The Masters were fleeing to the Savage Air to explore the wilderness. How could they dare bring superpowers with them? Without the power and force granted by the state, what difference would the consortium bosses make from ordinary people? Bringing superpowers to the Savage Era, what if they rebelled against the Cheyenne Gang? In reality, of all the ships, Tony's helicarrier had the strongest defenses, but unfortunately, it encountered its nemesis. "We have no choice but to retreat and seek Carol's help," Tony said helplessly. With Friday here, he can't decipher the programming here. The clever Tony Stark quickly understood that while the enemy could absorb energy, they had no way of deciphering electronic programming. Few countries had developed artificial intelligence 80 years later, let alone in the 1930s. Furthermore, they were poised to seize the helicarrier, so they certainly wouldn't start by wreaking havoc. There was no point staying here. Better to retreat and find capable reinforcements. With a loud boom, a hole suddenly blew open beneath Tony's feet, disabling the internal shield. Friday controlled both suits, drilled through the hole, and flew out of the helicarrier. "Looks like you're learning your lesson," Tony from the base universe floated nearby, joking. Faced with a powerful enemy, your intelligence often doesn't cut it. It was Tony who had contacted his other self, who had gone to rest, to coordinate a blast through the hole and escape. Chapter 447 The Worried Elite Eagles. After Tony and Steve escaped, Sebastian, as expected, didn't destroy the helicarrier. He still harbored the idea of occupying it as a base. If the Hellfire Club had such a swanky and powerful base, what could they possibly accomplish? Unfortunately, despite considerable research, he couldn't figure out how to control the ship, and the helicarrier remained under Friday's control. Putting aside Sebastian's unsuccessful search for treasure, the Iron Arcs, which had remained silent since arriving in this universe, finally reacted after witnessing Tony Stark's humiliating escape from the helicarrier. "Tony, what's going on?" The shameless Nick Fury, naturally, wouldn't let Tony's taunts sullenly disown him. Seeing him fleeing, he immediately connected, asking, "Did we encounter an enemy? There are superpowers in this universe." "Carol, come help," Tony called out. "From what I've observed so far, New York City below us in 1939. I've seen posters for Wuthering Heights and Gone with the Wind," Phil Coulson said, analyzing the intelligence he had gathered. "This is a problem," Nick Fury frowned. "The Roosevelt administration might not trust us. If it weren't for the rebellious refugees below, armed with advanced technology and production equipment from 80 years into the future, they wouldn't have to worry about gaining the trust of the authorities. Neither the politicians in the White House nor the bigwigs on Wall Street would refuse to acquire advanced technology from 80 years into the future. But now they've been tricked by the SHIEA, not only giving the Roosevelt administration a bad first impression, but also constantly on guard against further SHIE attacks. However, these are minor inconveniences. Nick Fury, who knows the nature of American politicians and corporations well, is confident he can convince them that as long as there's profit, the deaths of these New Yorkers don't matter. The real problem is that the people aboard these arcs haven't reached a consensus yet. Are the other arcs still out of contact? No, Coulson shook his head. These idiots. Nick Fury's face darkened, publicly hurling his financial backers insults for the first time. They're definitely still trying to activate the device. After discovering their destination wasn't the Earth of the primordial era, they naturally tried to restart the time machine, but Alice, there was no response. After trying twice, Nick Fury gave up hope. Since SHIE could dump all the arcs with different coordinates here, they had clearly cracked or even gained control of their time machine. Further attempts would be futile. However, the high-ranking officials on the other arcs refused to accept this outcome. After discovering that New York below was in 1939, they were even more unwilling to accept it. Since these old men were almost all born in this era, their fathers and even grandfathers were still alive. Wouldn't it be awkward to connect with them? Would they call their younger fathers dad? Most importantly, their bodies were already aging. Others who traveled back in time or were reborn had young, healthy bodies, allowing them to enjoy the joy of time travel. What could these old men do in 80 years ago? Even if their former first love, their moonlight, stood before them, they wouldn't have the energy to fight. Better to leave quickly, out of sight, out of mind, and return to their original goal of building a new foundation for their family. Damn it! Can you do this? Aboard one of the Ark's consortium bosses angrily berated the frantic engineers. Didn't you promise you understood the principles earlier, sir? The equipment is fine, but it won't start. The lead engineer sweated profusely, anxious. If they couldn't demonstrate their worth, they would most likely be thrown off the Ark, or even executed, and their wives and children would suffer the same fate. Knowing it was 1939 below, the engineers were actually eager to leave the Ark. With their technological prowess far ahead of their time, they would surely be personally received by President Roosevelt upon landing, receiving treatment comparable to Einstein's. The cunning consortium bosses naturally wouldn't let them leave, which was why the Ark remained adrift. However, the Ark's energy supply was limited, lasting only 50 hours, which, according to the plan, was enough time for them to build a flat landing pad on land. Even if something unexpected happened and the destination turned out to be the ocean, the Ark could force a landing on the surface and then, using its pre-installed engines, sail towards land like a giant ship. However, the current scenario wasn't part of the plan. The consortium bosses were also fretting. Over time, the riots below gradually spread from Manhattan to other boroughs. However, these other boroughs were far less affluent than Manhattan, so the refugees had fewer targets to loot, and the sound of gunfire became less frequent. Meanwhile, the National Guard and Coast Guard stationed outside New York City finally arrived in the city, urged on by the White House and the Pentagon, and began an organized attack on the invaders. After all, they were military forces. Though outnumbered at the moment, they possessed heavy weaponry that the NYPD lacked. The refugees, however, had only a few submachine guns. Even in free America, machine guns and artillery were prohibited. While the automatic submachine guns of 80 years later could certainly outgun the NYPD's revolvers and Mauser pistols, they were powerless against a modern military. Furthermore, the troops, having received professional military training, were far more organized and disciplined than the ragtag refugees, unleashing a vastly superior fighting force. As the American soldiers arrived at the battlefield and opened fire, they saw the seemingly invincible alien invaders described in intelligence reports collapse and flee. What's going on? Are we that powerful? Yay. If we can even defeat aliens, we should go to Europe and fight the Nazis, idiot. My grandma says the German mustaches are man-eating demons that can only be destroyed with holy water. Can your grandma get some holy water? Even the frontline commanders of the National Guard and Coast Guard were so bewildered by the situation that they didn't bother to stop the soldiers from whispering. Previously, the White House and the Pentagon had emphasized the alien invaders' strength, nearly scaring them away. Now, at the first contact, the enemy collapsed. The two commanders exchanged a glance, then turned to the communicator and shouted, "Notify the White House and the Pentagon that our soldiers have fought bravely and have defeated the first wave of alien attacks. We are expanding our victory. Please rest assured, gentlemen, they were all smart men who knew the art of being an official." This was the honor of repelling the aliens. Among the many generals in the United States more than 100 years of history, who had ever fought against aliens? From today on, their names will be praised by Americans and even people all over the world. There are still 2 chapters to go. Chapter 448 Captain Xiamen. Unlike America, a nation untouched by war across the Pacific, This ancient power on the western Pacific coast now faces a precarious situation. Its hostile neighbor has invaded on a massive scale, seizing nearly half its territory. The land is shattered, the people are displaced, and their lives are in dire straits. This is the most perilous moment. Even in the Marvel Universe, this history remains largely unchanged, if not more so, as the invaders include transcendent beings. The Chinese people here must fight both open and covert battles, while also contending with the prejudices of the cosmic consciousness, which favors bald transport captains and public speakers who use Air Force funds to invest in the stock market, and supports the underworld gentry who treat the people as weeds, ready to regrow even after they die. Living in such a world is even more difficult for ordinary people. Your eyes look like you want to eat me. The white-bearded ancient one turned away from Lin Hao's sharp gaze, muttering softly, I used to be influenced by the consciousness of the heavenly Dao, but now I've changed. Ancient One has now signed a contract, his soul protected by a demon's contract. Go to the northwest. Lin Hao glared at him. Ah. You're not going. Gu Yi was stunned. You think I don't want to go? Lin Hao said angrily. There's a lot of water in this. Gu Yi was stunned for a moment, imagining a grand drama of the conflict between the laws of heaven and the consciousness of the universe, with countless ancient beings and higher dimensional beings wrestling. Well, he wasn't wrong. At this moment, a celestial palace towering above the clouds was floating over the Bohai Sea. The Guangdong army stationed in Luda had already spotted it. Planes with plaster flags affixed to them took off cautiously, trying to approach. Lin Hao, a rare act of personal action, first destroyed the aircraft with a fierce wind, then struck the pilots with thunderbolts from the sky. However, he controlled the force and prevented the clamoring Japanese from dying. Then, a sudden burst of swords, fire, boiling oil, and scalding soup, he subjected the Japanese to every possible torture, until their consciousness collapsed, but their bodies remained alive. Great sage, you've been to the underworld. What other tortures are there in the 18 hells? The crowd above the clouds fell silent. King Long and his minions retreated on tiptoe, fearing they would be spotted by their boss. This was the first time they had witnessed Lin Hao's brutality, the first time they knew of his boss's deep dislike for the Japanese devils. Last time, I went straight to the Hades, not the 18 hells. The great sage was helpless. How about I teach you a trick to turn them all into minions? Yang Jian suddenly asked. Lin Hao's eyes lit up, but after some thought, he shook his head. Let's wait for Ancient One to return and get the advice of the elders. After all, this is their universe. It's rare to see you respect someone so much. Yang Jian glanced at Lin Hao. Because they deserve respect, Lin Hao said sternly. After the Japanese plane lost contact, the Guangdong army headquarters was on high alert, ready for battle. However, the celestial palace in the sky remained silent, leaving the Japanese uncertain. A little over 3 hours later, a golden red portal lit up on the white jade slabs of the Asgard. Ancient One was accompanied by a team of men, led by a muscular man in uniform. Hello, Director Lin, my name is Shi Amen, Shi Amen shouted, standing at attention. According to the commander's instructions, our team will now follow Director Lin's command. Okay, Yang, take the comrades to change their equipment, Lin Hao called over his shoulder. Zhao Yi, another level 7 agent assisting Lin Hao, remained in China in the main movie universe. Get Captain Shi a new set of armor. This tights is hideous. Shi Amen was about to object, but thought of the commander's order and quickly retracted the thought. Shi Amen's team consisted of only a few dozen, carefully selected elite warriors. However, he was the only one with exceptional physical abilities, the others were ordinary. This small number was no match for the experienced Director Lin. Transforming them all into powerful warriors would be a piece of cake. According to your request, they've selected an independent regiment-level organization to come here and place themselves under your command. It's approximately 2,000 strong. Gu Yi recounted to Lin Hao the results of their previous discussions. Independence Regiment, Lin Hao blinked and asked, what's the commander's name? Commander Li Yanlong, Political Commissar Zhao Gang. They're stationed in a place called Zhejiao. They should have received orders and are assembling their forces by now, Gu Yi replied. Li Yanlong, Lin Hao was stunned. Is there really such a person? Let's go to Zhejiao now. Lin Hao was impatient. Aren't you supposed to be unable to go? Gu Yi wondered. You say, an outsider, just went off to participate in political negotiations. Isn't that embarrassing? Luckily, There are also a number of supernatural beings there, and there are also long-established supernatural organizations who have joined. He'd heard of Kamartaj and the Sorcerer Supreme, and his real magic meant he wasn't dismissed as a fraud. According to Gu Yi, even if Lin Hao didn't fly Asgard over there, sending a few spaceships flying towards the Red Star would be more direct than just sending him there. In the main movie universe, Zhao Yi had been dispatched simply and crudely to make contact, but here he had to be humble. I can only see the captain, no higher, Lin Hao explained, then urged, stop nagging. Open the door, wait until Captain Shi is done, Ancient One explained. If we just run over there without one of their own leading us, we'll easily be mistaken for spies. Clearly, Ancient One had experienced something similar before, and it had deeply touched him. Lin Hao had no choice but to wait patiently for a while until Shi Amin and his team, fully equipped with advanced equipment, approached cautiously, fearing to damage their clothes and weapons. Only then did Ancient One open the portal. The golden-red portal appeared, revealing a desolate lowest plateau beyond. There was almost no green in sight, but it was on this lowest land that a group of tenacious people lived. In the face of turbulent times, these simple, kind-hearted people sacrificed their homes to help the invaders. Entire villages, young and strong, threw themselves into the fight against the invaders, shouldering the heavy responsibility of preserving their national heritage with their frail bodies. Determined to protect their nation from enslavement and their civilization from destruction, they charged, swords and spears in hand, against the well-armed invaders. What a lovely group of people. Shi Amin and his squad had just appeared in Taojiao, instantly scaring off the villagers. The Japanese are invading the village. Captain Shi paused again, his words etched in bitterness. In a cave somewhere in the village, Li Yunlong, the commander of the independent regiment, heard the gongs outside and cursed in anger. Damn it, why did they choose this moment? Monk, bring the guards and follow me. We'll take the lead. Chaos reigned in Taojiao, and only after Shi Amin and Li Yunlong met did the misunderstandings between the two sides be resolved. At this point, it would be a shame not to write about the domestic situation. So I inserted Li Yunlong in it. After all, this is the only thing I can write about. Don't worry, I will control the scale. Chapter 449 Li Yunlong, I heard that you made a fortune. Wow, old Shi, you've struck it rich. Li Yunlong circled Shi Amin, his eyes glued to him, his hands never leaving his armor, rubbing it all over. Get your hands off me, get them off me. Shi Amin pushed old Li away with a look of disdain. He didn't dare use force. His strength was already beyond ordinary, and now with his nano armor, he felt like he could poke holes in the sky. Don't you see how dirty your hands are? Hey, lend me this suit for a few days. I'll make sure I shower every day. Li Yunlong felt around for a while, noticing not even a speck of dust on the smooth metal. Wow, amazing. It doesn't get dusty at all. This is great, it doesn't waste water. You haven't seen that before, Shi Amin boasted. This suit uses nanotechnology. There's not a single crack or bump on the surface. It's so slippery. Dust and grease won't even get on it. No more words. 5 sweet potato porridges. Lend me this for 2 days. Old Li's eyes gleamed, his mouth practically watering. Oh, I don't know you. Shi Amin quickly stepped back, scornfully saying, now that the things are in your hands, Li Yunlong, you're still going to return them. As the captain of the guards protecting the Holy Land, Shi Amin was a household name, known to everyone from top to bottom, and even those who had visited the Holy Land had seen him in person. Li Yunlong, a veteran of the Long March, had known Shi Amin many years before, and the two had interacted numerous times. The independent regiment had just received orders from their superiors, informing them that they, along with Shi Amin, would be under the command of a certain Director Lin. Although Li Yunlong was puzzled, he understood that the order must be carried out unconditionally. Rumors. They're all rumors, Li Yunlong said sternly. Go ask around. Everyone in the surrounding area knows that I, old Li, am a man of my word. Isn't he a handsome young man? Shi Amin retorted. Why did you change the words? Li Yunlong's face was filled with resentment. His eyes rolled, and he immediately turned mournful. Old Shi, you don't know how hard life was for our independent regiment. The villagers even didn't eat their own rations to provide us with them. Don't try to be ridiculous, Shi Amin interrupted him. This is something Director Lin gave me. I told you you're short-sighted. The real boss isn't here. Shi Amin suddenly realized, pushed Li Yunlong away, and said sternly, you're playing tricks on me, Li Yunlong, aren't you? As an old friend, how could Shi Aiman not understand Li Yunlong's character and abilities? The other party must have recognized Lin Hao from the beginning. After all, his fair, tender, and refined appearance was different from other cotters of his generation. His features were too obvious. The reason he didn't approach him was probably because they were unfamiliar with him. But the crying child gets candy. If he doesn't cry a few more times, can Li get more equipment? Li Yunlong is using him as an excuse to cry poor to Director Lin. Old Li, whose thoughts were revealed, chuckled foolishly. Fortunately, Zhao Gang came over after hearing the news and broke the deadlock. Are you Director Lin? Zhao Gang went straight to the main person as soon as he entered the yard, stretched out his two hands, but when he looked down at his pitch-black hands, he took them back. However, Lin Hao reached out first, held his hands tightly, and said, "Thank you for your hard work." It's not hard, it's not hard." Zhao Gang felt warm in his heart, and said with a smile, "We just received an order from our superiors and are sending messengers to contact the troops. The mountain roads are rugged and it will take half a day to gather them. Northwest Shanxi is bitterly cold and the soil is poor. The land of a village can't support many people. The independent regiment has more than 2,000 people, and they must be dispersed to have food to eat. The lowest plateau is crisscrossed with gullies, and even a short ditch, 4 or 5 meters across, can sometimes take half a day to reach the rendezvous. Don't rush, comrades, take your time and be careful." As he spoke, Lin Hao conjured up rows of containers. There was nowhere to put them on the ground, so he levitated them in the air. The doors of the containers opened, revealing a stash of clothing and food. "Gather the villagers and collect the goods. Everyone gets a share." Zhao Gang was amazed at the exquisite clothing and food on the containers. He had seen the world, but how could all that worldly experience compare to these timeless goods? "Director Lin, we understand your kindness. Thank you on behalf of the villagers," Zhao Gang said with embarrassment, "but leaving these fine goods in the villagers' homes is not a good idea. Our troops may not be able to stay here long term." What if Zhao Gang, at this moment, had a nagging misunderstanding regarding Lin Hao as a playboy with no sense of worldly affairs? Lin Hao, unfazed, declared confidently, "Don't worry. With my help, we'll be able to drive the Japanese out quickly. And within a few years, civilians across the country will be wearing clothes like this and eating food like this." Zhao Gang and Li Yunlong, unaware of Lin Hao's capabilities, exclaimed in disbelief. Gu Yi, standing nearby, added with a chuckle, "Director Lin wasn't exaggerating. If your superiors hadn't chosen self-reliance, we could have taken direct action and wiped out all the Japanese invaders in an instant." This, Zhao Gang and Li Yunlong exchanged a hesitant glance. "Just take what I tell you to," Lin Hao said sternly. "Bring the villagers here first to claim their supplies. Once the troops have assembled, come back to exchange equipment. You'll see how confident I am." "That's an order." Upon hearing this, the two men stood at attention and responded in unison, "Yes." The villagers of Zhaojiai were suddenly more excited than at Chinese New Year. Brand new clothes, shoes, and a dazzling array of food filled the air, as if they were dreaming. Seeing the villagers weeping, clinging to their belongings, and refusing to wear clothes or eat, Lin Hao ordered, "Call the kitchen staff and prepare a big pot meal. Everyone come and eat heartily." This transformation wouldn't happen overnight, but once they realized the arrival of happiness and peace, they were bound to burst forth with a passionate pursuit of a better life. The kitchen staff reveled in a feast. The squad leader declared he'd never prepared such a sumptuous meal in his life. There were all sorts of meats, vegetables, and even fruits he'd never seen before. My goodness, even the emperor couldn't enjoy such delicacies, could he? Well, he really couldn't. Lin Hao smiled at the satisfied expressions on their faces. Many of the ingredients and fruits here were unearthly. After the meal, the troops gathered one after another, turning the big pot meal into a buffet, with one group eating and another taking over. Those who finished eating would gather to change into their equipment. Changing gear wasn't a simple task, requiring considerable time and training, and even casualties from unfamiliarity with the weapons. But with Director Lin around, casualties were a minor matter, easily restored with a wave of his hand. My goodness, there's a constant supply of iron boxes in the sky. Just how much does Director Lin have? Li Yunlong, who had been staring at the containers, soon realized he couldn't keep up. From uniforms to submachine guns, from mortars to mountain cannons, and even rocket launchers that could be carried all over the mountains, there were also reportedly tanks, airplanes, and even warships. I don't know, but I kind of believe what he just said. Zhao Gang's eyes lit up with excitement. With all this equipment, how hard can we drive the Japs away? Ding-ling-ling, ding-ling-ling. Commander, there's a call from brigade headquarters, the messenger ran in to report. Li Yanlong was about to run to answer the phone when he suddenly stopped, turned around, and grabbed the operator, instructing him, go answer it and tell them I'm sick. Yes, sick enough to be unable to get out of bed, and I won't be well for 10 days, haha. Do you think the brigade commander will believe that? Zhao Gang laughed beside him. Orders are handed down from the top, level by level. The brigade commander deliberately waited until now to call you. Can you escape? Bad luck. Damn bad luck. Old Li made a bitter face and walked towards the confidential room with legs as heavy as lead. He picked up the receiver and a familiar voice came from inside. Li Yanlong, I heard you made a fortune. He emphasized the word big in the sentence. Chapter 450. The Japanese planes are finally here. Rumors, all rumors. Old Li immediately retorted, Brigade Commander, you don't know, we are so poor that we can hardly eat. Stop talking nonsense to me, the superiors have already given the order, you, Li Yanlong, eat the meat, and the brother troops must also drink the soup. The voice on the other end of the phone said with a smile, of course, the premise is that you come first, and the surplus will be used to support the brother troops. But you must hand over all the old equipment replaced by the independent regiment. This is the bottom line. Li Yanlong was immediately delighted. It was obvious that the brigade commander underestimated the local rich man this time. He didn't know how rich Director Lin was and he was still eyeing those old equipment. No, we have to keep calm and can't let any loopholes slip away. This. Li Yanlong pretended to hesitate. Brigade commander, we are serious. This is an order, no room for negotiation. The voice on the other end of the phone suddenly straightened up and emphasized, the old equipment of the independent regiment must be handed over. Okay, obey the order. Old Li agreed immediately. After hanging up the phone, Old Li ran out gleefully, boasting to Zhao Gang, haha, the brigade commander didn't get anything this time. As he spoke, Li Yanlong realized, I was careless. I agreed too quickly. As expected, the brigade commander on the other end of the line slowly put the phone down, puzzled. Strange, this kid Li Yanlong only dragged his feet for less than half a minute today. He quickly realized, I almost got fooled by this guy. He must have gotten something bigger. No, I have to go there myself, he said, running out of the command room and shouting, guards, prepare the horses. After a bumpy ride, the brigade commander arrived in person at Zhaojianyu, and his smile never closed. Zhaojianyu, once a small mountain village, was ablaze with lights in the middle of the night. Countless huge machines were humming away, even without anyone inside, operating autonomously. Slopes were being leveled, potholes filled, earth excavated, and roads built, as if an ancient giant were creating the world. Projects that would normally require countless manpower were being completed at a speed visible to the naked eye. I've arrived. Even the staunch materialist wavered for a moment, but quickly regained his resolve. It seems our superiors were right. They truly are from the future. The thought ignited a surge of excitement. Great, wonderful, if the future nation possessed these advanced machines, it would signify its own strength, free from the humiliation of aliens. Their sacrifice would be worth it. As he watched, tears welled up in his eyes behind his glasses, unable to stop. Brigade commander, why are you here? Li Yanlong jumped up in fear, like a mouse at the side of a cat. The brigade commander took a deep breath and glared at the old man. If I hadn't come, you would have fooled me to death. Li Yanlong scratched his head, his cunning expression suppressed, a simple smile fading. I just didn't have time to report, really? Director Lin later pulled out those machines, and they scared the soldiers and villagers. The villagers literally knelt on the ground and kowtowed to the machines. It took us a long time to calm them down. Old Li stood at attention. I'm sorry for delaying reporting to my superiors. Please criticize and punish me. Don't give me that. The brigade commander scolded with a smile. The superior's orders have been conveyed. Your independent regiment is no longer under my control. Lead the way, take me to see Director Lin. His superiors had already told him that Lin Hao and the others came from the future country, were government officials, and were comrades, so the brigade commander would naturally be open and honest. Li Yanlong turned and led the brigade commander to the temporary cabin where Lin Hao was staying. Lin Hao had naturally noticed their arrival and was hesitant, but more excited. Never mind, never mind. Just once, With a gritted teeth and a stamp of his foot, Lin Hao was the first to step out to greet them. Only the unfathomable heavens knew the magnitude of the risk he'd taken this time. A single misstep would have resulted in his death. Lin, hello. You've worked so hard. Lin Hao quickly stepped forward, tightly grasping the brigade commander's hand. He spoke with emotion. Thank you and the other seniors for all your dedication to us, the younger generation. Alright, don't say anything. I'll do it. Lin Hao immediately took charge, saying, whether it's weapons, equipment, or machinery, I've got it all. As much as you need, just carry it, move it, and fix it. Director Lin wasn't exaggerating. Which donor could match his wealth? That was a fortune accumulated over millions of years by the Kree civilization. For example, if weapons and equipment were dropped on Earth, even if they were idle, the weight alone would crush the planet. And that's just a drop in the bucket. The resources commanded by interstellar civilizations far surpass the imagination of a single planetary civilization. Okay. Please organize your troops to transport them, or wait for me to build the road and send them over. The brigade commander was deeply moved by such enthusiasm. Thank you. What followed was a revelry throughout the Eight Lords, and the entire northwest region was thrown into chaos. Countless machines suddenly appeared on the loess, splitting mountains and rocks, building bridges across rivers, and constructing roads and even railways. These were wartime times, and even the mountains and rivers were shattered, and the people were suffering constantly. The most important thing to do was to expel the invaders from the country as quickly as possible. As for learning and innovation, we could wait until peace came. As for the mud and sand, 5 million words were omitted here. Such a large-scale commotion naturally could not be concealed from the world, and the most horrified people were undoubtedly the Japanese. North China Front Commander Tada Shun, after connecting with headquarters and learning the intelligence shared by the Guangdong Army, was shocked. Baga. Impossible, absolutely impossible. What immortals are attacking? Don't those idiots of the Guangdong Army even know how to make up a lie? Send out the Air Force. Bomb them all. Amaterasu is protecting us. All those Chinese immortals are dead. Conventional military force alone wasn't enough, so Tada Shun ordered the mobilization of Japan's supernatural forces. Despite his outbursts of impossibility, the old Japanese soldier knew full well that smoke without fire had its origins, so he made thorough preparations. Notify the Hand and have them send their best ninja. I need detailed intelligence on the Northwest. The Japanese army in 1939 was incredibly motivated, and their response was swift. Shortly after the order was relayed, planes bearing plaster flags took off from airports in Xi'an, Taiyuan, and other places, heading for the base. This time, Lin Hao didn't react. Damn it. The Japanese planes are finally here. Li Yunlong, hiding on a ridge, ordered the monk beside him to remove the bazooka from his back and carry it over his shoulder. These past 2 days, I've been shooting target planes all day. I'm so heartbroken. At the beginning of training, Lao Li didn't feel bad. But after Lin Hao told him that each of these target planes could exchange for at least 100 Japanese planes, his heart was bleeding every time he pulled the trigger. I wrote 6 chapters in one go, and I finally have the nerve to ask for some monthly votes going to bed. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.